Hey everyone, thanks for joining. This space is entitled Why I Loathe Ron DeSantis Personally. Now, why would I do a space on such an obviously disagreeable and grumpy and unfair topic like my personal feelings about Ron DeSantis? Nietzsche certainly recognized that the ad hominem argument is often the best argument. You can tell a lot, you can learn a lot about philosophy by looking at philosophers. Who are they? What class do they derive from? Why are they doing what they're doing? So the ad hominem actually is a good form of argumentation. But also, I think my disagreeableness or distaste for Ron DeSantis does go beyond just the man himself. If he were simply this guy and not doing what he's doing, I might not want to be a friend of his, but I wouldn't have much of an opinion on him. But in this case, I really do think the personal is political. And so you actually can learn a lot about Ron DeSantis just by his manner. So everyone knows that Ron DeSantis's campaign is failing, and seemingly as people learn more about Ron DeSantis, they like Ron DeSantis less. There, of course, is an opportunity to turn things around. There are many cases of people being in single digits who eventually won Iowa. I mean, back in 2019, or 2020, whichever it was, things looked pretty dire for Joe Biden, losing the first two primaries and then winning over. So, of course, he can turn it around. But I think we all agree that he won't. There's just something about him that he has made his pitch, and it's not a case of people just need to learn about him. So he has been promoted on Fox News and other conservative media, perhaps more than anyone. In fact, more than Donald Trump in many ways. And so the idea that he doesn't have name recognition or that people just don't know about him is false. He has made his pitch. You probably could make this argument about Vivek Ramaswamy. He is campaigning all over the place, and say what you will about him. I'm not a huge fan, but no one knew who he was beforehand. And now they do, and he's a very strident young man, and they sort of like him after a while. So he could conceivably have a chance to rise in the polls. Who knows? He could win Iowa. I don't think he will, but who knows? Maybe just claiming that God is real on Twitter is enough. No way. I don't know. But with DeSantis, you just can't make that claim. I mean, anyone who is, and I'm not just talking about political junkies or someone like this who's on this podcast. I'm talking about people who are engaged in the process to some degree. They're watching the news, they're checking out their Facebook page, etc. They know who Ron DeSantis is, and the more they learn, the more they dislike him. But I do think that I profoundly and viscerally hate Ron DeSantis vis-a-vis Donald Trump. And for me to explain that, I have to explain a little bit about my own trajectory, my own history, etc. So, yes, you probably heard at some point that I boldly declared "Hail Trump, hail our people, hail victory" at one point. A truly outlandish moment. I'll never live it down. You can criticize it. You can say it was amazing and great. You can have all sorts of opinions, but it just is what it is. And there's no doubt that I felt that there was about to be a sort of breakthrough at that point. And in many ways, that was personal. I thought I was going to make a personal breakthrough and that everything was going to change and politics was going to be completely different and so on. I became very disappointed with Trump in office. And I don't need to relitigate all this stuff. I'll just, you guys know what I'm talking about exactly. I think that in terms of policy, there wasn't a lot of there. And I do think that a rather toxic personality cult arose. Maybe you need that in politics. Maybe that's actually a good thing in politics to some degree, but it certainly wasn't put towards any good use. And I also would say that I don't think that Donald Trump invented populism or anything like that. He just rode the wave. He got his surfboard out, threw it on the wave, and jumped on and rode it towards the beach. He exemplified it, he amplified it more than anyone, even if he didn't quite invent it. I think there's a lot of background causes for populism. But he also kind of took the populist wave to its fruition, for better and for worse. He revealed the stupidity of American politics. He refused to leave office and engaged in the most buffoonish coup d'etat attempt in world history. He calls out people on Twitter who are currently prosecuting him. I mean, he takes it to the limit. He pushes the envelope. And though he is known for throwing people under the bus and deflecting blame, he ultimately will be martyred by all of this at the end of the day. I think there are limits to what you can escape. He could no doubt escape the indictment over, paying off Stormy Daniels, and he could escape all sorts of little, kind of white collar crimes or whatever. I don't think he will ultimately be able to escape J6. So he's kind of exemplified populism and angst in the country to the most intense degree, even if he didn't invent it. And he'll ultimately be martyred by it. And so he has benefited from it, and he's in a way exploited his followers, to be honest, raising money just for Stop the Steal and all this kind of stuff. I get it. I've made all those criticisms. But he'll ultimately be brought down by it. And I kind of admire someone who, despite his many faults, swings for the fences and either hits it out of the park or strikes out. Someone who is either going to be the hero or the goat. And I think Trump will actually be both within this 10-year Trump period in which he has defined American politics. There's something to admire about him. He's bigger than other candidates. What I see with Ron DeSantis and why I do passionately loathe him is that he wants to have all of the kind of side benefits of this populist wave, while ultimately not ever paying a price and ultimately not even being willing to exemplify it. So his entire political career has been very standard Republican stuff. He went to these schools, he became a JAG officer, he tortured some folks in Guantanamo Bay, he declared that he wants to end Social Security or reform it or something. He was just a standard 2000s era Republican. And then he kind of sees which way the wind is blowing. And he wants to kind of draft off those winds without, again, being willing to fully commit. Because as a sociopath, which he is all about endlessly calculating and kind of, holding his finger up to the wind, seeing the exact way it's blowing. He doesn't want to fully commit to that swing for the fences mentality that Trump obviously does. And so I don't respect him. I also, have some wariness or anxiety or distaste for the transgender issue or something. I think he I, I don't know. I'm kind of throwing him a bone here, to be honest. But his only interest is to kind of pick up on those anxieties and then do stunt policies that will play to pander to this audience that is actually genuinely concerned about these things on a deep level. I think his immigration stunts are just the full expression of that. Um, obviously, immigration is a national issue. It's something that has to be done through Congress. As a governor, you can do something, but not much. There's no even like recognition that an immigration paradigm has to be changed. Now, Donald Trump did recognize that the paradigm has to be changed, at least in 2016. He doesn't talk about it a lot now. It wasn't just about the wall, it was about Americans are dreamers too, and things like that. Ron DeSantis does these policies that are borderline criminal and involve human trafficking to various hotspots. And it's all about creating some little sensation, creating something on social media, seeing the response, and then benefiting from it politically. But it's all just meaningless pandering and stunts. So I just see this person, he's absolutely unwilling and unable to personify the populist anxiety, to ride the wave. He wants to try to avoid being caught up in it. So he won't even denounce J6 or say that the election wasn't stolen. He's afraid of offending some Trump fan. But then he also won't ever commit to anything at all. He's just playing this weird calculated game of trying to pander and placate people and not fully committing. That is a good short-term strategy. In the long term, you just become absolutely hollow, because you could just reasonably ask, okay, well, who are you? What do you actually believe in? What do you represent? We have a representative government. Who are you? What are you representing? Are you the Republican establishment and their desire to end entitlements? Are you a kind of neocon? Are you a paleo foreign policy? Who are you? There is no answer to that, because he is a fundamentally empty person. There is no personality there to begin with, and there's certainly no ability or willingness to represent something. There's just an eagerness on the part of a sociopath to benefit from existing trends and ride the wave, but just a little. I might jump off if it gets a little too rough, then I might change myself here and there. It's just absolutely fraudulent and absolutely contemptible. Beyond that, as a personality, I simply cannot stand him. And if I don't know, the definition of hell might be being forced to listen to Casey DeSantis talk politics for 15 minutes. So anyway, those are just some feelings of mine. What do you guys think? Do you want to jump in? Anyone? All right, there we go. Hey.
Hey. Yeah, I was a bit taken aback. I knew you didn't like Ron, but the Casey tweet from I think yesterday of whatever that town hall type setting was or whatever, who talking about whatever. I didn't get through it, but yeah, I was not aware that it spread out throughout the whole administration.
Yeah, I'm going scorched earth on this bitch. Yes, just no there are no survivors.
No sympathy.
But Richard,
No sympathy.
have you considered that they're doing us a favor by trashing the value of Yale and Harvard degrees?
They are in many ways. Like I am one who is inclined to value education. I am not one of these guys who hates someone with an advanced degree at all. I'm the opposite of that. However, there is just something so mediocre. Have you listened to Ron DeSantis talk about history like either the founding fathers or Christ's disciples. So there was one interview that he did where he was like, I forgot what they said. Like, who would you like to meet? Like, who would you like to have dinner with or something? And who was that? Blake Masters. He'd be like, well, the Unabomber and maybe Hitler. I don't. He's such an edgelord that he would have been
The
like.
best part about Blake is that, like, if you meet him in real life, he's like the kind of person you'd leave your dog with, like, for a long
Oh
weekend,
yeah.
right? He's like a perfectly wonderful, nice person, and yet he like has the craziest ideas.
Well, he's just such an edgelord. He just cannot help himself. It's like, I don't know. It's Hannibal Lecter. Like, I would like to meet that guy. And people are like, "Oh my god."
He's like that guy who you have as a neighbor in Tucson, who's like,
But
But
anyway,
for me,
um,
DeSantis is American History X, or not American History X,
wow.
American Psycho
Wait a
Well,
without the charm. Without the
yes,
charm.
American Psycho without like
Sorry, I
the
got my movies
coolness.
confused there a second,
Yeah.
friends.
Those are two interesting films. Kind of, I think maybe Mark and I should do a podcast on both of those, but together. But anyway, so he was on like the Christian Broadcast Network, and they asked him, "Oh, who would you like to meet?" And he was like, "Well, it was just great when Jesus's disciples. I mean, a guy came to them and he said, 'I'm going to start a religion,' and they were like, 'Okay, let's go.'" It was just so unbelievably flat. It was as if, as opposed to Jesus Christ, you could have substituted in like, "I'm starting a new business," or like creating a softball team or something. It was just so flat. There was just no conception of this world historical event of Jesus's incarnation. And again, I'm not a Christian, but even I like have all this respect for this. Like, this is a monumental thing. And your conception of it was like, yeah, I'd like to hang out with that guy. Ugh. Like, he is so fucking shallow. I cannot even put it into words. He did it again with the founding fathers. He was like, well, yeah, they were saying we don't want tyranny over here. So let's do a revolution. Okay, it is just so flat. There is nothing there. I mean,
My
the
favorite stuff
difference
is when he
between
talks about the
him.
Confederacy. That's the best.
I want to hear this, but
The,
just to tie a bow in it,
yeah, go ahead.
the difference between Ron DeSantis having a Yale and Harvard degree and someone who has no education at all is indetectable. Like, there is no reason to believe that this guy has seriously thought about anything. So what I see with him is this just annoying little striver who is like flat and sociopathic and just utterly meaningless.
Like lots of Harvard grads these days, though. He's
Yeah.
representative of them.
Ugh.
Okay, but in terms of what he's actually done compared to someone like Trump, wouldn't you say that Ron DeSantis has quite literally enacted more beneficial legislation that helps the average white American
No.
than Donald Trump has ever
Helps
done?
the average white American? What are you talking about?
So E-Verify, the ending of diversity, equity, inclusion teaching, he's clearly anti-trans or anti-LGBT, whereas Donald Trump waves the tranny flag. And you're going to get the Israel shilling. That's already baked into the cake with any Republican legislator or whoever it may be.
None of this
Ron
stuff
DeSantis,
is attacking public schools. Public schools are actually okay, and they're better than okay in many cases.
how are they okay?
I get it that many in like terrible neighborhoods are terrible, but if you go to a public school in the United States, they are better than okay. And in fact, if you look at white children in the United States, they have testing scores that are equal to kids in Japan. So this whole idea that there's a crisis, most all public school teachers are totally fine, good-natured women. And some men. There should be more men.
Okay, but that's not what this is about.
You have your brain rotted by watching
Mostly pretty attractive.
libs of TikTok. It's not all like that. That is a tiny percentage of things. And they basically turn you against these schools that are actually pretty good in most cases, and they make you think that they're this like hive of transgendered orgies or something. They're just simply
Okay,
not.
Richard. Well, when was the last time you were in school like that? Because I'm a lot younger than you, and I can
My
personally tell
daughter
you
is in
that
second grade, man.
Okay, but is your daughter reporting back to you the exact intricacies
Yes,
and everything
and
about
she
what's
has
going
not
on?
been turned into a man. They're fine.
Maybe your daughter, maybe
Yeah, do you see how you have
Richard
no
Spencer's
real evidence
daughter.
outside of like libs of TikTok? Like literally your brain
That's
has been rotted by.
that's not evidence that I'm using.
Well, what are you saying then? You're
You're
just
using your
vaguely
second grade
asserting
daughter as
that
evidence.
it's all evil or something. It's not.
It's not
It's
asserting that it's
fine.
all evil. I'm asserting that any possible step to lessen the brainwashing or the inculcation of anti-white narratives into the white children is beneficial.
Anti-white
Can you
narratives.
accept
You
that?
guys fall for this stuff. What the conservatives want to do is basically like actually the liberals are entirely correct on this. In fact, what conservatives want to do is pretend that slavery didn't exist so that you don't like offend them or something like that. They actually do want to whitewash history and give you this like goofball fitting for Ron DeSantis recitation of what this country was about. I actually don't support it. I think you should learn about slavery, in fact. I mean, maybe not in second grade, but, you know, at some point you
Maybe
should
be a
learn about
slave
this
for a
stuff.
day or something, you know? Maybe you have to wear the chains a
Right.
little bit down in Florida,
For drama class.
you know? Just get them ready. Get them ready for what I object to with DeSantis is like, isn't he an Italian? Like, what the fuck? He has no claim on any of this stuff. Like, his family came
Now, wait a
over in like Ellis Island days. You know, like who the fuck is he to lecture me about American history?
How many people who are not of actual American descent will lecture you on that every day and actually create
Yeah,
law?
fuck them too.
Fucking all of them. So that's not really
Fuck them too.
own them.
Well, that settles it.
All right. I'm going to send you away, phrenology analyst, not because I'm trying to silence you. I just feel like I don't really feel like getting into a back and forth on this. And I have allowed you to speak your piece.
Let's be real.
thank
A
you.
lot of people deserve silencing. Let's be real. Like,
Well, yeah, I know.
let's just
but,
be honest
you know,
about that.
I don't feel like being.
Phrenology specialist, like, get the fuck out of here.
I don't
What a-
feel like getting into a harsh debate here. I would rather just have all of my opinions affirmed by everyone
Right.
here as we try to outdo one another in pissing on the DeSantises. How does that sound?
I feel like everyone
Beautiful.
can get behind this. Everyone can come together in hating Ron DeSantis. Really, he can be the uniter that we always hoped George W. Bush or Barack Obama might
Correct.
be. You know?
I
Wait
agree.
till the
If
hurricanes
you
hit
don't hate him,
Florida.
there's
They're
something
done.
weird about you. Sorry, Dana, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you. Just wait till those hurricanes hit Florida. There's no insurance right now. They're in deep trouble. And I really feel for the people of Florida because it's not going to be pretty. I'm born and raised on the Gulf Coast. There is no way around Florida going to be in serious trouble this season.
Why is there no insurance? I
Because
heard
the
some
way
vague story about this, but
He
explain.
stole all the money. He stole all the money,
Well, he's
basically.
also letting all the
short version.
rich claim stupid, negligent, stupid crap and getting brand new houses and building them and claiming insurance. So if you have money to, say you have mold in your house or get someone to make a claim that you have mold in your house. And let me give you an example so that somebody goes, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. My next door neighbor got her entire roof paid for because she had horrible hail damage. Now tell me, my house was older than hers and my roof was older than hers, and they came to look at my roof and I had zero hail damage. And I tried to get the free roof too, but no, I had no hail damage. But my next door neighbor had it? Come on.
Is this hail or hell? Because with your colorful
Hell,
accent,
like hell.
they seem to be the same.
You best not confuse that
But
down south,
I'm from
Richard.
the South, but I know what I'm talking about. That's all that matters.
No, you're right about this. I mean,
I
look,
know
there
I'm
was a
right
whole
about it.
bunch of
I paid
insurance
for it.
scams.
Trust me, I know.
There's so many insurance scams in Florida. I mean, basically, Florida is a giant insurance scam if you think about it.
Completely.
You
Thank
know?
you. Yes, it is. And you know what? If
I
anybody
mean,
in
it's
this room
basically a
lives in
swamp.
Florida, they know this already. Especially if you have money. You know this already.
And so
I think it's a
Ron
joke.
has dipped his hand in the cookie jar and taken money from like statewide disaster relief. Is that what he's done?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Wow.
Basically, what they did was
It's his
they figured out a
wife's
way to
it's his
loot.
wife's hand in the cookie jar more so.
Yeah, his family figured out a way to loot the insurance, basically the hurricane insurance
Mm-hmm.
fund. And his thinking is that basically he'll be president by the time there's a big hurricane that rolls through. And then he'll be out, he won't be there when that hits, and there's no money in the tin to pay for all the
Oh
damages.
my God.
And so he's bribed all the super rich people by letting them basically like deduct their second or third houses, and basically get their new roofs or their new swimming pools or whatever. And it's not going to go well, to put it mildly.
Yikes.
He didn't pray hard enough. Charles, you remember he didn't pray hard enough.
That's right. He didn't pray hard enough.
All right.
It really seems like he's
Now,
taken a deal too early, and really taken some promises maybe he can't renege on, and it doesn't seem like it's going to work out for him.
That might be true. Let's go down the list. I'll try to go to people who I let on first, just to put a little order to all this. So we have another phenomenon. I was thinking this was phrenology, but this is actually something that I like, phenomenology. So we're going to get some
Thank
Heidegger
thank
or
you
Husserl
for the
or
mic.
something going on here.
Well, I actually just wanted to, regarding the gentleman who said that President Trump was, furthering the trans agenda, I just wanted to just really quickly correct the record. The Obama administration had placed a lot of rules that protected transgender by redefining what the words sex and gender meant in Health and Human Services, in the military, in the Department of Justice, and all over. So President Trump actually rescinded those rules. So they defined sex and gender as just being biological. There was a lot of anger from the left regarding that because it stopped the rule under Obama that allowed opposite sex to use biological sex bathrooms. It stopped the Medicare and Health and Human Services for giving special access and payments to transgender treatments. He also banned trans from, women's prisons, women's shelter, and of course from the military. He also had something called deploy or depart regarding HIV in the military. And then President Trump also
So if you had
banned.
HIV, they would deploy you into war zones so that you could be a human bomb, as it were.
Well, I'm
Sorry, that was
that
a really tasteless joke, but please go
yeah.
on.
He also
That's funny.
He also banned DEI and CRT from federal agencies, and then he expanded that to any contractor that did business with the federal government. So Ron DeSantis truly was not the pioneer against what is now called woke ideology.
Right.
And then President Trump, lastly, he also did the 1776 commission, which was studying and implementing more. It was guidance for schools to return to less race and sex-based education to more realistic and historically correct view of our American culture. So I really appreciate the mic to be able to correct this record, because Ron DeSantis doesn't run on much except for this woke ideology, and President Trump was definitely the pioneer with regard to that.
Yeah, I appreciate all these facts. I'll add just two quick things. Ron DeSantis issued this ad either today or yesterday, making Donald Trump seem like some transgender advocate or something. It's obviously not true. And the other thing, going back like a decade, Donald Trump said, okay, you can be in a beauty pageant or whatever. To be honest, if anything, this makes him seem kind of reasonable or like generous or something. the idea that that was like pioneering in the situation that we have today is just ridiculous. So, you know, it's also just an irrelevant issue at best. I would say this, though. I do think that these are macro cultural changes, and that I don't really think that you can legislate them out of existence. So, for instance, I can remember, I am old enough to remember 2015 when Caitlyn Jenner first came on the scene, and it was a novelty and something that many found strange. Donald Trump was elected the next year, and throughout his time in office, I mean, I guess you could argue that he almost inspired an intensification of transgenderism just by the fact that he represented a sort of populism. So I do think that these are much bigger issues. I also don't think we should be doing, obsessing about diversity in public schools or anything, but I would just stress that these are kind of macro trends that I don't think you can really legislate away or around. But,
I mean, it's been in movies for years.
I'm pro eunuch. I have nothing against the eunuchs.
Well,
just want to say that for the record.
Yes.
The question is, are they patriotic eunuchs? Or are they eunuchs working with the Chinese or the Israelis? That's always the question I have about the eunuchs.
All right.
And frankly, I personally love being able to piss in the women's bathroom. It's much cleaner.
Have you done
Dear God, I'm going to have to throw you off here, Charles.
Charles, is this from experience?
Women can be notably dirtier than men sometimes.
God, please, let's not open up the subject.
Chad, is that real?
All right. I appreciate that phenomenology. Just out of curiosity, why did you choose that as your username?
I just used to enjoy reading some philosophy phenomenology. I feel like that people sometimes spend too much time on like abstract ideas and not like what's actually happening right in front of us.
Right.
So I just think I wish more people would study it.
Okay, definitely. I second that. Vanitors un condors.
Thank you for the opportunity. When it comes to people like Ron DeSantis, I've always sort of noticed that he's almost one-to-one analogous with a now past Russian politician Vladimir Zhirinovsky, where the deal with Zhirinovsky was that basically in his public appearances he was everything that the public kind of needed him to be, starting from the weirdest and wildest version of libertarian up until like a Russian fascist or a solid tanky. In a sense that DeSantis kind of seems to latch on the issue that seems to be the most controversial of the day, and doesn't really put much thought behind it. He's sort of like, he really should read some phenomenology, because as Heidegger famously said, like it has to return to the being, not necessarily to what it is not.
Yes.
And when people like DeSantis kind of like arise, of course it is always sort of like, especially from someone, as you can probably tell, that I'm outside the US, I'm sort of like observing these spectacles, and he's seemingly doing good things, but you can almost smell this sort of like sleazy underpinning behind them. There's it's basically, you can smell Ron DeSantis, and that's the thing you
Yeah.
and that's probably why people
Holy
are
shit,
kind
can
of
we say that?
repulsed by them.
That's true.
So, remind some of us, or give some of us a little bit of background on Jurakowski as a Russian politician. I've heard
Oh,
of this person, but
it's
I want to learn more.
it's Zhirinovsky.
Zhirinowski, excuse me.
He's Zhirinovsky, like Zizek.
Okay.
Zhirinovsky. He's he was well, his background is that whenever he was asked about his family, he said that his mother was a Russian and his father was a lawyer. So you can probably guess what he's alluring to.
Interesting.
He's he was one of the more interesting Russian figures because he sort of all he kind of kept in the old sort of Soviet spirit where he would threaten all the neighboring countries to bomb them and do all this crazy stuff, and no one kind of took him seriously, even in Russian politics. He was like an endearing figure, but well, that's one of the main differences between Zhirinovsky, or Zhirik as people sort of called him as a term of endearment. Zhirik actually had swagger, contrary to that guy, and he led the Russian Liberal Democratic Party for, well, that's a whole story in of itself, where, well, the party sort of like, it just held lots and lots of ideologies together. He always came very
The
close,
Liberal
or
Democrats
was
wanted to bomb Poland. It's just kind of funny.
Oh, Poland, Baltics, whatever, just whatever was around, whatever was the topic of the day. Well, also there's like famous footage of them doing the Roman salute in the Russian Duma and etc. But that's neither here nor there. And yeah, the thing with Zhirinovsky is, oh, he was also a part of the, well, when asked about the coup in the 90s, he he famously said that that thing was all garbage, but if I was there, then it would have succeeded. He was a very interesting figure in Russian politics. He really sort of, he was the Trump that sort of like people remember from 2016, but the main difference between that is that he sort of like was able to maintain this sort of like bravado and this whole energy throughout his political career. And yeah, it's a very it's, even as someone who's,
He was way more manly than DeSantis ever was, though.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of.
absolutely.
It's interesting you compare him to DeSantis in the sense of just being all things to all people, but I almost sense some of that crazy Trump energy from 2016 and sometimes else in this figure. I need to look. I think I've heard of him, and I think I even saw like a television spot on him at one point. But I definitely want to learn more because I do think he's paradigmatic. There are some other figures in politics that had marginal careers, kind of like Beppe in Italy or something like that. You would have these just wild men of politics arise, and they'd say all this outlandish stuff, which was kind of neither left nor right in many ways. It would be like, we need free healthcare, and also we're going to invade, invade France, or just totally ridiculous stuff like that. But I think it was almost authentic in its way, and I think Trump succeeds with that type of energy. Like when Trump gave this or issued this video in which he talked about flying cars and like building new cities in the Midwest. I don't think he's going to do any of that, but that was almost the most authentic thing about Trump, was that he's willing to just say all of this outlandish stuff that I think is, maybe at best kind of motivating and dreamy, if that's the right word, for people who support him. And I think there's something to be said for that.
Well, XPeng in
The
China
people.
is already bringing the first flying car to market. They flew it in Dubai. So I think he wants us to be competitive.
Well, yeah, but should we be flying cars? I mean,
No, but do we want China to lead the way? Right?
maybe we do.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen Asians
maybe
driving. I
eventually.
know
I
what's
thought
up.
Oh
about
my
that.
God.
We
I
don't
guess
want any Asians driving.
Okay.
Let them figure it out first.
Wow.
I guess
Wow.
Too far?
I get
Oh my
I
God.
guess the
Hey, I was
last
married to an Asian. I have firsthand experience on
That's
this.
true. You're a veteran, a survivor.
I'm a veteran. I have serious survivor's guilt after all the people we ran over the years.
Yeah,
I think it was
post-traumatic.
more of a statement of like we need to take back being the innovator. I think that's really that meant.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing to add is why I chose to compare Zhirinovsky precisely to DeSantis is that everyone kind of knew that Zhirinovsky's career would always ultimately just be a spectacle, in a sense that he didn't really hold any political power. He was just there to just express the common sentiment of the day.
Yeah.
And I get your sort of like your associations with Trump, but the thing with Trump is that you can kind of see this goofy version of Caesarism within Trump. He's like a goofy Caesar, but and there's still sort of like potentiality for some sort of like expression of sovereignty. But with Zhirinovsky, you kind of look at him and he's fun and he's entertaining, but you're always at the end of the day faced are forced to face the fact that he is just sort of like just a figure of political infotainment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think DeSantis is ultimately the same thing.
I think it is infotainment. It's Diet Coke as a political actor. Yeah. No, thanks for joining in. I'll actually give you a follow. You had some interesting things to say. All right, JD, Cowboy JD.
Hey, Richard.
Hi.
I'm actually in the area from I think where you're from, like Highland Park area.
I never lived in Highland Park proper, but yes, around there.
Well, if you're, around the area, I mean, if you're in between the two highways, you're probably, you're in there. But I mean, yeah, I would say for sure, it just seems like DeSantis, like I was saying earlier, he's made some promises he can't follow through on. And he kind of seems like the Jeb 2.0 with some, I don't know, really actually they seem like good memes, but they really aren't because they don't really come from the heart.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't really seem real.
Yeah.
And I think people can smell it from a mile away, like our guy before was saying.
Look at the difference between the user-generated memes of 2016. Like, I'm thinking of one in particular, which was just the ultimate Trump era nonsense. And it was this like Asian one where this like cute Asian girl was on her bed and she sees Trump on television, and then he becomes like an elephant
I think
or something. I mean, it's just totally bizarre.
Wasn't he going to make anime real? Wasn't that one of the memes?
Yeah, exactly.
Too? That was great.
Yeah, and even in there,
he kind of did.
There's one where Trump, he's like, he gives a Roman salute. It was so like outrageous that they were willing to go there at that point, but it was all obviously kind of fun. And then you see the Ron DeSantis, I'm gonna go Patrick Bateman on the gays that was basically generated by his campaign. I mean, it was created by the War Room, but we know they're all
by the gays in his campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
The gays in his campaign made the anti-gay,
And
video.
it was just this aping of like memes, but then also it was very creepy and dark. There was no like exuberance to it, and so everyone was like, "Holy shit, you're gonna literally kill people!" I mean, like it was terrible, and
it was far out.
Yeah,
man.
and I think Trump, like, eventually it got, at least for me, it got old, it got disappointing, it got, the QAnon stuff was just totally awful. But there's still this, like, semblance of wacky hope with Trump, you know what I mean? But with DeSantis, it's like, if there's any meme energy or dark DeSantis energy, it's like the energy of a serial killer. And I just think there's something, it just needs to be called out. Like it's really bad.
I think it's because it's probably funded by a bunch of probably like demented millionaires and billionaires who don't maybe like Trump.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
They don't want that.
They really don't like for all of Trump's bad sides, for whoever you are. He does represent kind of a pro-America message, like with the new cities and the flying cars. They just don't like that in general, whoever they is. It's psychopaths in general.
Yeah.
Who have money.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for your comments. And maybe we'll run into each other down in the Park Cities at some point.
If you visit, I mean, Dallas is a great place.
Yeah, well, I'll be there in a couple weeks, actually. Big D.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Dude.
All right. See, I'll give you a follow. See, I'm making friends left and right.
All right, dude. If you come down, I may hit you up for sure.
All right, sounds good. We'll go to some of these classic. We'll go to some classic restaurants that I haven't been to in like 20 years. I know some places down there in the beautiful suburbs.
A lot has changed,
yes.
But I feel like they have kept a lot of the Highland Park area the same, probably because a lot of the owners.
Deep Ellum is kind of the same too.
Deep Ellum changed a lot after the BLM riots. I would not go down.
Really?
There. I was living down there during those riots.
Well, I was hoping to get.
It got bad.
I was hoping to get a new nose ring.
Well, if you want to, you can go down there again.
You know, I saw when I was in high school, I attended Oasis playing. I can't remember the name of the bar, but it was before they became big and were playing stadiums. And I saw them play. And I was underage, of course, though through my fake ID mastery, I was able to attend their concert. And they were. Who was the lead singer? Liam? Was that the lead, or was it the other one? The brothers? Yeah. He was getting like harassed because it was a bar, and so there were probably like 100 people in a kind of small venue, and he was getting harassed by someone, and so the entire set, I remember it vividly, was like they would be like, today is gonna be the day, and then he would just be like yelling in this like really almost like Cockney like fashion at the audience. He would be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna kick the living shit out of you blokes," and then he would be like, they like go to the next song. It was really quite a time.
That's kind of crazy. I wouldn't expect Oasis to play that kind of music.
Go.
Yeah, it was. I think it was like right after their first. Was it almost maybe their first album? I can't.
Didn't they play Wonderwall?
They might. Yeah.
Of course they did.
Yes,
absolutely.
So that's surprising.
Yeah, it's how I remember it. I'll have to go back. Maybe they had I just remember I had learned about them by listening to whatever like alternative radio station I was listening to, and I liked them, and so I saw that, and I went to go see it. I was probably like this is like 1996 or 5 or something. Anyway, it was an amazing show.
Oh damn! Well, I was young back then, but they make good music.
Yeah,
and that alt music was actually pretty good. That's kind of my favorite genre from like high school. I mean like Cartel and stuff like that. And all of it's pretty good. And then indie took over I think before in another chat I told you, like, I'm into music and stuff, but I'd say, there's good EDM, there's some good mainstream music, but there's also like classical music and stuff. So
definitely.
there's always classics though.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I will move on. Thanks for that. Jacqueline Pick.
Hey, I just wanted to say that I lived in Florida the last few years. I lived there under Trump and also under Biden and under Ron DeSantis. And being a veteran, I liked him at first. But the cracks really started to show about 19 months ago when an influx of people by the volumes really influxed into Florida and it started to crush and change the way of living. Rents like started to double, then triple, then quadruple. You couldn't afford a one-bedroom apartment on a living wage for a single mom or a single dad or people that had lower middle income or middle class, and they were crushing the wildlife by building up. And I mean, retirees were getting squashed out. And I mean, they're really killing the wildlife off. And all he can keep saying is, come on down. And instead of saying, we need to fix this nation, so it really irritates me because, in a way, all I see is a guy trying to be Camelot, the GOP. So it's like a guy in a cheap car salesman to me.
Yeah.
And that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I totally
Nice.
agree. Yes.
Give it to him, Jackie.
That whole
Give it
Camelot
to him.
thing that Casey tries to create is just totally ridiculous. Like that world tour they went on where she was wearing Jackie O dresses. I think she wore one at the inauguration of the governorship. It's just they cannot pull it off. And then of course they flip on a dime and she's wearing camo pants and a t-shirt that says Mamas for DeSantis and high heels. I mean, it's just like, again, we're just dealing with reptiles.
You can't hate on the gays. You can't hate on the gays and then have a good aesthetic. It's just not how it works.
She wasn't being
You need to bring
She
the
wasn't
gays
being
right.
Jackie O. She was a caricature off of the Disney princesses because those blogs
That's
were
right.
disgusting.
And they got married in
Well, to
Disney
piggyback
World.
on what you just said, Charles, is his main surrogate, Dave Rubin. I mean, he just like they rented wombs of two different women at the same time. That to me, that's like pretty much, a modern definition of woke. I just think it's pretty interesting that, like, if this is Pete Buttigieg and his spouse, then the left and DeSantis stands would go absolutely berserk. But because it's Dave Rubin, it's totally cool.
Yes.
That's a really good point.
Also, look at the just terrible people whom Ron DeSantis has hired as his online surrogates. I mean, just the lot of them are just really off-putting and annoying. From Pedro to Fish Lady to who's the
Bill Mitchell?
Yeah, Bill Mitchell, for God's sake.
That's one of the ones that surprised me, though.
Well, yeah, I mean,
the Tampa Bay stripper.
Didn't he drink the blood of Kali in terms of like Trump worship? I mean, I'm kind of surprised he's allowed to like not be a Trump sycophant, but apparently he is.
They're always looking for converts, Richard. They're always looking for converts in Ron DeSantis' Florida.
Yeah, but just these terrible people who are kind of like aping something. They're aping something that they can't themselves represent or express. So it just becomes unbearably flat and hollow and just really off-putting. All right, let's move on. So I'll go to Jeff in a bit, but Deep, I'll have to do this in order. Deep Barot, or Barrow, Deep Barrow, tech, energy, crypto investor. Oh my God, please don't give us any crypto advice.
No. I also short too, so I could be playing the other side. But
definitely
just
don't give us crypto advice. Deep.
Okay. All right. No, I was just here to comment on Ron DeSanctimonious. It's a very good topic, actually. There's a lot of reasons to loathe him, because he's just another career politician, and he's been running a shadow campaign against Donald Trump for many months, for that precise reason that he wants to bring back the days of the old GOP. And ways you could tell he's a career politician or a bought out politician is from the way in which his campaign has been raising money. I mean, he just collected donations from the George Soros organization just a couple of weeks ago. He's been very quiet on certain key issues, right? Like Biden's proxy war right now in Ukraine, right? He's kind of been tightroping that, and the reason he's been doing all of these things is because he's been groomed by the establishment to basically be that candidate figurehead to run against the Make America Great Again movement, right? The MAGA movement, which I'm a huge supporter of. I'm a big backer of President Trump's policies. I think it's probably the best thing that has happened to American politics in my lifetime. And it's quite sad and disgusting how these people want to bring back the old GOP, the days of George W. Bush. If you like those days, right? If you like the Iraq War, if you liked the trillions of dollars that we spent, and if you like the Washington swamp, right? If you like all of that needless and endless spending that doesn't really go towards the American people, but essentially makes the swamp even bigger, then indeed you should support Ron DeSanctimonious or whatever you want to call him. But yes, sadly, he is a career politician. He does not have the private sector background or private citizen background like President Trump prior to politics, and I think he would basically just be another establishment career politician. Which, to be honest with you, and this is just my opinion, there's very little difference between a Republican and a Democrat. They are pretty much more or less all bought out to represent the interests of corporate elites that basically want to rule and control over every aspect of your life in both domestic policy and foreign policy. So, yeah, just to answer that question, why I loathe him, I've kind of given you a few reasons right there.
Definitely, you've given us some reasons. I appreciate that. I'm forced to push back just a little bit on some things that I heard you saying. I do agree with you that he is much more representative of the Republican establishment, and that at least 5 or 6 years ago, before he started aping Trump, he was just an off-the-shelf, Paul Ryan, Scott Walker type politician, and then he decided to be a Trump fan circa 2016 or whatever. I totally agree with that. One thing that I guess this is kind of a pushback and kind of not. Do you know the last two Republican presidential nominees who actually won a majority of the vote?
Are you referring to the popular vote?
Yes.
You're referring to the popular vote, right? I don't remember.
It's Bush 1 and 2. So it's Herbert Walker in 1988 and then W in 2004. So
there's many reasons to be concerned.
Let me
you understand?
Let me finish my point here, because I'm kind of agreeing with you in a way. So I do hear a lot about this of like, we don't want to go back to the losing strategies of the Bush family. And it is important to remind people that they were the last ones who won a political capital or an affirmation by the public in a way that Trump didn't, and even W didn't in 2000. But I do agree with you that doesn't work anymore, because so many of the suburban white liberals, let's say, a professional class, doctors, lawyers, corporate managers, are now voting Democrat. And so that is actually a noticeable trend. And that's something that I, like growing up in, say, Dallas, Texas in the 90s, I would find just unbelievable. The idea that someone who had a really, 6-figure, high-paying job, nice car, lived in the burbs, that he would suddenly be a Democrat was unthinkable, when I was younger, or largely unthinkable. But that has really changed. So I agree with you in the sense that I don't think the Republicans have a obvious path to national power, and I think it's the Democrats that are going to increasingly come out of polarization hegemonic, in fact.
But you understand why that problem exists, Richard.
Right.
That problem exists because there's a lot of propaganda that the media spews. And generally, there are some people who are gullible enough to believe in that propaganda. And like you said, right, the everyday doctor, lawyer, corporate guy that comes home to his family after work, they're going to be exposed to CNN or MSNBC or even Fox, which is mostly spewing mainstream propaganda, right? That the swamp wants you to listen to.
There's propaganda on the right.
It's
interesting that the party of the working man or something is now the party of the six-figured law degree corporate manager. I mean, that is an interesting.
But you understand this is not a left versus right issue. This is an issue of the MAGA movement versus everybody else.
I totally agree.
Right? They want to crush the MAGA movement.
Yes.
They want to end the Make America Great Again movement. They want to bring back the political establishment. And like I said, right, I mean, I genuinely believe there's very little difference between a career Republican or a career mainstream Democrat. There's literally basically no difference. I mean, if you look at Lindsey Graham, if you look at Mitch McConnell,
I get it.
Like, what is different from them? And
I muted you. Sorry. Just let me finish. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you in this way. I think the only path forward for the Republicans is wild Trumpian populism due to this serious demographic shift that has already taken place to a large degree and is continuing to take place. And so it's a kind of double-edged sword, or
probably true.
Damned if you do it, damned if you don't. Like, they have to go wild and crazy Trump. And granted, that's going to turn off a ton of people, and it might very well lose, and it might very well end in disaster. But you have no choice. Like, you've got to swing for the fences, and there's no other option. Let me go, and I have my own criticisms of Trumpian populism, but I do kind of recognize that reality. But let's go to Jeff Giza. How are you doing, my man? Oh, you
of this.
There you are. There you are.
Oh, hi. Thanks for having me on, Richard, and good to see some familiar faces. I saw the topic, and I was like, I'm here for that. As you may have noticed, I love. I'm similarly annoyed by DeSantis and Casey, and I just love, even though it's good to focus on substance, I still like to analyze their image cosplay and just the messaging and communication. And I kind of concluded that I think DeSantis isn't. I mean, Trump. I'm no longer a supporter of Trump. I think the MAGA movement actually deserves to be smashed, and the best thing for the GOP would be to move beyond it, frankly, post-Trump. But I actually think, and Trump has kind of constitutional issues in my eyes that have really, that's a hard line for me. But in some ways, I actually think he's got some issues. He's cringe as hell and has some issues like treason. But and like his son-in-law. But anyway, it is. But
treason.
DeSantis, I think,
Can you back that
first
up?
I thought, DeSantis is like the deniable Trump, right? In some ways, I think DeSantis is actually worse than Trump in the sense that he's got like this built-in deniability. I kind of grew distant from Trump because when I realized, like, I love the middle American Trump base, and when I concluded that Trump was leading them off of a cliff, or at least down a cul-de-sac, and selling them hot air, and that it was kind of a con, right? That really viscerally impacted me. And I think Ron DeSantis comes along.
Could you bring some
and
specifics
is somehow
to that?
more dangerous.
That's a fair criticism in a way.
It's
hold on, Phenomenology. I'll let you respond, actually, but just let him finish his statement.
Well, I'm glad you approve. But so I think he almost gives this image that we're breaking from Trump, and yet we're actually not. Like, he never called Trump out on that stuff. He gives this image that we're going towards the substance of Trump and leaving behind the BS of Trump, and yet he's doubling down on like all of the culture war rhetoric, and like taking it to a whole next level. Like, I think I personally don't like him. I mean, as a governor, he doesn't bother me, but for some reason, as a presidential candidate, I just find him completely pathetic. The way he's beta orbited around Trump and didn't even call, like, he's not even running against Trump, right? Like, he's just sort of like, and then Casey, eyebrow Hillary, coming out with her mama bear protect children. And it's just sort of, it just doesn't quite feel real to me. It feels very astroturfed. And I just wonder, like, who are these people? Like, where is the authenticity there? So that's my little rant, but I can go off. But like, all of my gay criticism energy is activated when these topics come up.
Yes. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's that I think Richard Nixon said to Eisenhower at one point, when Eisenhower was about to offer him the VP, he said, you've got to shit or get off the pot. You can kind of hear Nixon say that. You've got to commit. You got to swing the bat. And it's this weird situation with DeSantis where he's running directly against Trump while running with Trump at the same time. And it becomes this just worst of all possible worlds. And I think you could you could kind of talk yourself into that's really smart or something, but it's actually not smart. Like, you just can't be a fan of the Yankees and the Red Sox. Like, you just can't. And all you're going to do is make everyone hate you if you do that as a calculation.
Exactly.
The guy is just so cringe. And like, I had this moment where I realized, oh my God, I'm more charismatic than Ron DeSantis. Yes. I'm not that charismatic, but I was like, I am literally more charismatic than Ron DeSantis. Let that sink in.
Yes. I can't wait.
Or when you realize,
I can't wait
when you
for
realize
Chris Christie to get his first knock into him. I want Ron DeSantis to say something smart ass to him so he can just knock him flat on the ground.
Oh,
he will.
Also,
Trump is going to squash him like a bug.
No,
yeah.
Chris Christie,
and it's going to be fun.
Chris Christie is too. I cannot wait for Chris Christie to do it. Right?
Let me bring up a parallel here. So I remember this when I was a kid, actually. So when he was running for re-election, George Herbert Walker Bush went to a grocery store in this man of the people moment, and he was awed and confused by the existence of scanners, which have been around for like decades. And he was like, "Oh, what is that? Oh, that's fascinating."
Yes.
Technology, and all of the people, the common folk, just saw that and were like, "Wow, this guy has never had to buy a loaf of bread. He's not like me. He's an elitist." All that stuff. Wow. Now, fast forward 40 years, I guess, and so Trump had one of these moments, but just because he's so ridiculous, it came off as funny and lovable. So he went to a DQ and he was like, "A blizzard? What the hell is a blizzard?" and like, I know what a blizzard is. I loved blizzards when I was growing up. Like, everyone knows what a blizzard is. He doesn't, because he's been, sequestered from society. But just whereas George
and poisoned by the Diet Coke lobby.
Right, exactly. But whereas George Herbert Walker Bush, he seemed like an out-of-touch elitist snob. Like, even in a moment where he could be pitched as that, Trump is just funny. Like, I don't know what to say.
He has that comedic aspect to him.
Yeah. But anyway,
he has that stand-up comedic aspect.
Yeah.
Also, what the hell is a blizzard? Like, what the hell is a blizzard really? Like, if we're honest about it, like, it's not really an ice cream. It's not like, what the fuck?
I don't know. No one knows.
It's a peanut. I get the peanut
like
butter
a blended
cup
sundae.
only when I'm on like a long road trip.
Jeff, you get the Reese's?
But
no, we know it's great. We just don't know what it actually is. Like, yeah, or Oreo Blizzard. That's a great thing. That's an American tradition, up there with the Liberty Bell.
The other thing I realized about Trump is, like, even though I don't like him anymore and I've turned him and I think he's treasonous and all that, I can't help but, like, he's like a toxic ex that you still want to sleep with.
Yeah.
You're like, you're like, wow, I'm really attracted to this person. I can't be around you because I know how toxic you are. That's how I feel around Trump, because I
Still looking at their
still,
Instagram.
yeah, and maybe that's, yeah, exactly. And maybe that's not the best metaphor, but that's the feeling that
It
I get. It's
actually
like,
is
wow,
for a
I
lot of
secretly kind of,
ex-Trump people, I think.
yeah, it's like I'm still attracted to you, but I know you're bad for me and the country.
Yes.
Like a line of Coke. That's what I
Yeah.
think of.
Oh my gosh,
Wow.
yeah.
Also, at least Melania had the good sense to shut the fuck up. You know, there's something to be said for a
She
woman who
was
just
pretty
shuts the fuck
proper.
up. You know, every
Everyone's
so often.
grifting or like drafting off one another. You know, all these people who aren't interesting or important in themselves just like draft off other people. So it's like DeSantis is drafting off Trump, whom he's trying to defeat, and then his wife, who's
Right.
like even less interesting and charismatic, is like drafting off her husband. You just see this like weird train of sociopaths, and it's just like, ew.
I mean, she's not ugly though.
She kind of is, though.
Oh, come on now.
You have to see him
Without the make. Okay, excuse me. Maybe
She's
I'm jumping.
weird.
No, she's let's be
awkward
honest,
and weird.
If she
she is
was,
super cute. I mean, honestly, if she were in my yoga
Let's go.
class, we would
Oh,
chat.
I love her
Jeff,
figure, but
She's super
she's
cute.
you're
weird.
clearly gay,
But
and we're
She's
taking your
weird.
opinion on this.
but no, she's super cute.
She is
But
cute, but she's weird.
That's fine.
Whoever
Guys
told her
like
to
that.
tattoo her eyebrows, it's wrong. Plus, she's not authentic. She needs to go through like an Earth Mom
It's an easy
phase.
fix. Easy.
But she's too Southern for that.
Well, look.
But it would be fun to have a space on image consulting for Casey DeSantis. That would be a fun
if she
space.
were just some normal woman, I'm sure she's perfectly fine, and I would call her cute. But in this context, she is a heinous she-demon.
I don't really believe in the wives running or the husbands running alongside the people.
Totally agree.
It's just kind of weird.
It is weird.
It's like, you know, I don't give a fuck what Jill Biden does in her spare time. Whatever. You know, it's Joe's the candidate.
Yeah.
Who even is the second gentleman? Who even knows? Like, he's like you never even run into him. He's just out there doing his thing.
Yeah. All right. Phenomenology. I promise to allow you to respond to some of the Trump critique. So go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you, Richard. I apologize for interrupting. It's your space, but I just get so bored when people, cast these broad strokes with just emotion and like no detail behind it. And so sometimes just have this knee-jerk reaction to just, with intellectual honesty, want somebody to say, oh, okay, you think Trump's a treason, or you think that his policies were bad, but you can't name them. So
okay, well,
sorry
how
for
is
the interruption.
Document stuff not sort of kind of treasonous?
Well, it's accused treason, right? He hasn't been convicted of treason.
Did we see Paul Sperry's, did we just see how the redacted versions of the affidavits show that they totally complied with the subpoenas? If you go follow Paul Sperry's analysis of the newly released court documents, it also showed that the boxes that they took photos of were filled with clothing bags, tokens, and campaign paraphernalia. And so Brat, he hid all of that from the public. So that's now just being shown. So those boxes didn't have any documents. So again, it's just, I just tend to have like this standard when people just say treason that I just feel like they should put something besides emotion behind it.
Okay, show us some documentation of what you're saying. I'm not tending towards agreeing with you, but I'm willing to hear you out. So,
are you talking
to
me?
Paul Sperry?
Put that up on the
Paul
Jumbotron.
Sperry is a big Trump stand too, though. So we need to be kind of mindful of that.
I know, but he doesn't make up the unredacted documents are showing. He can't fake a court document.
I'm willing to look at this. Just give me something to take a look at. I don't tend to.
I'll pop it in the net.
Yeah, I'm a little bit skeptical of what you're saying, but fair enough.
I've always thought there's a possibility that there's documents they're looking for that they haven't told us about. They only tell us what they want us to know. at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So there's always that possibility too. And that's kind of like fun to, hype,
Yeah, and the
make
feds never charge you with the full thing. They usually charge you with like 30% of the thing, in case you're naughty, and then they really have to put you away.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes, I think a couple of things. This theory that this involved Jared in some way, I think still is a very distinct possibility that this was involved in the massive investment by a sovereign wealth fund from the Saudis into Jared's hedge fund. I think this is still a possibility. I would want to look into that. But it's almost worse if he wasn't even getting paid off with this stuff and he's just, showing classified documents to people just to show off. I mean, that's almost in a way worse. I do think that Jack Smith seems to work very quickly. He's a diligent, busy bee. And I would not be surprised if we don't see an indictment involving J6 this summer. We're definitely going to see one involving Georgia. Okay. So I guess I missed some people. Francis, you've been there with your hand up. You can speak.
Hi, Richard.
Hey.
My guess for his campaign for DeSantis, I'm going to personally assume that he's going to ride it out the full way till the end, like how Cruz did with his in 2016. And even if he doesn't succeed, it could be anyone's interpretation if that was a waste of time or if it provided some example that he would be taken seriously. So I would want to ask you, in your perspective thus far, in the future whatsoever, do you think he has any chance of ever actually winning a general election to be president?
No. Well, I agree with your assessment. I mean, there was just a transfer of $60 or $80 million to this 501c4 or whatever the hell it is, the Never Back Down PAC or whatever. So
2020-ish.
Yeah, you can't raise that much money and then just drop out. Although maybe that would be the best thing for Ron DeSantis to do if he wants a career after this. The other thing is that Roe,
for sure,
his campaign manager, was Cruz's campaign manager, and he's running the exact same thing. He's doing the exact same strategy that failed with Ted Cruz. You have an extremely unlikable person. You don't criticize Donald Trump directly and kind of try to draft off some of his energy, whereas your real heart is in just standard conservative movement stuff. And do
you think Jeff Rowe deliberately tanks these races?
I actually don't. I think these guys actually believe in this stuff. I mean, they want to make money, of course, but yes, I actually think they're that bad.
This campaign is just seeming more reminiscent of something like Bush Sr. when he ran against Reagan. I mean,
you're going.
Is it really suited for him to actually run for president while he's in the middle of a governorship? That's when you're in a governorship versus when you're in the Senate, completely different metrics. Isn't it just much more appropriate to finish that off and then you want to advance your career?
No,
but this is the opportunity, or this is an opportunity to show yourself as an example. And
I think he struck while the iron was hot. I mean, I don't think it gets any hotter than it was when he was succeeding at what he was doing. All of these political stunts in Florida were succeeding. He went after all of these horrible people from the conservative movement, like Chris Rufo and whatever. They were turning Florida into their, bastion of the conservative movement and taking over universities and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I think this was the time. Granted, he's young, but I think the odd thing about it is much like Cruz. I mean, is Cruz going to run for re-election in the Senate? He's definitely not running for president again. Cruz is
but being a governor is totally different.
He's getting older for sure.
Well, he's getting older. But
3 terms, I guess.
He looks older, but he's actually in his 50s or something. He's not that old. And
Richard,
Well, Cornyn would probably retire before him.
Being a governor is
No, I
totally
know
different
Cruz.
than being a
So I know
senator.
Cruz. Yeah, I'll just say so I know Cruz socially, and he's definitely aged a lot since his daughter's whole situation on the suicide thing. And for what it's worth, when I last saw him, I said, there's no shame in retiring, and he looked like he was kind of relieved to hear that. So make of that what you will.
I want to thank you for the space.
I think this is going to be a mortal blow because it's not like for instance, Vivek as someone who I can compare him to. I'm not really inclined towards him, but I'll kind of give the devil his due. Vivek, I could see going on Fox News or doing some weird thing after this. He's benefiting from this quixotic run that he's doing, and who knows? I actually wouldn't be shocked if he won Iowa or some crazy thing like that.
I just did a space with him, and he
Trump
kind of walked around a lot of the questions, but I like him. But I want to say thank you so much for the mic. I appreciate it. And Charles, I have some info on Max, so I'll DM you if you open those DMs.
Oh yeah, send me anything on the Max Brian situation.
Good.
Fuck him.
But just to finish, DeSantis had the entire establishment behind him. He got effectively endorsed by Jeb. He was endorsed by Rupert Murdoch, effectively in the Fox crowd. You can't.
He sat Glenn Beck and Jeb Bush right next to each other at his inauguration, by the way, which is hilarious.
Yeah, that is hilarious, but it's an expression of what he is. It's just incomprehensible conservative garbage. But
he should have waited longer.
You can't.
No, do you think in 2 years
this was his moment, and we see who he is?
It wasn't his moment. I promise you, because being a governor is like being the president of your state, and that's already such a massive job. And Florida has some serious.
Exactly why.
I'm sorry.
That's exactly correct. Yeah, that's why it's awkward timing for a campaign.
That's what I'm doing is defending what you were saying, Francis. I think you're 100% correct, because he has a lot of issues to deal with running, one of the biggest states in our country that pays taxes and all that other kind of stuff. And he's busy flying immigrants all over the country and, doing the stupidest shit. And right now you think he should be running for president? He's so immature.
I'm saying that I don't like Ron DeSantis.
No. I know you don't like him, but I'm just saying he has a serious job now and he's not even doing it now.
Well,
that's a good
I know.
point.
No, he's wasted his opportunity. No,
it's going to be over.
He's wasted his opportunity, and he could have run against Trump, and he could have moved the party definitively beyond Trump. But instead, he's like, hold on. Instead, he's like deniable Trump. Like, I'm not going to support Trump. Wink, wink. I'm supporting DeSantis.
Yeah, and it's over. You can't waste this much money and goodwill and then say, let's do it again in 2028 or whatever. I think it is totally over for him after this.
The whole thing seems like a trap to me. Like all the white collar criminals all donate to DeSantis and then they get their target letters from the government.
Interesting. You claim that about a lot of things. You claim that about RFK and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I think the RFK thing is 100% a trap.
Okay. I think
just to be clear about it,
really,
I think he might be legit nuts, but I think it might also be a trap. Right? It's sort of like that. It's like
who's running Florida? That's what I'd like to know. While he's doing what he's doing, who's running Florida?
The Speaker of the House.
I thought about that.
Speaker of the House.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so what is he doing? Is anybody paying attention?
Do you want him to be running Florida? I mean,
I think that's what he ran for and he got voted for, so he needs to do it. Yes, I'm sorry, I don't like him, but I think he needs to be doing his job that he ran for. You raised money from people, when you run for something, the money's coming from hardworking people and people who are super rich, whatever. But at the end of the day, a governor's job is the president of their state. It's as big of a deal as being president of the United States. So I think it's not like being a senator and running for president. So there is no comparison as far as I'm concerned. And
okay.
Yeah, but historically, governors are more successful at running for president than senators.
Sure, but he still hasn't been.
Absolutely.
He has only been a governor for what, 2 years, year and a half.
I just sense a lot of self-righteousness here of I like it more when we're just utterly cynical about politicians. Like this is his moment to shine. I'm kind of glad that he's not, doing actual stuff.
I'm glad that we're getting over him faster.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm not going to have to talk about him in 2 years'
No,
time.
let's digest this.
Probably
son of a
not.
bitch.
No.
I'm not gonna say who y'all should be paying attention to, but I will DM it to both of y'all so you can, because there is some people you should be paying attention to. This under DeSantis, and nobody's talking about him. I can tell you that right now.
In terms of
Tell the
what?
rest
In
of
terms
us.
of his allies, or
Just I just have been paying attention for quite some time about how a lot of Tallahassee, because Tallahassee's more up where I am, across the I-10. So it's a totally different conservative way of living than it is in the south of Florida, and
Uh-huh.
it's just I mean, they're both corrupt. They're just corrupt in two different ways, and the way he's corrupt up at the top is how it is where I live. So I understand what they're doing and how they're doing it. I see it every time I'm in Florida, which I go a lot because my family lives there, and I'm just the games that he played, all of them, even with the Democrats in that state, none of them they're all on the same page in that state. It's a game that they're all playing with each other, and everybody's picking a side, and you're not paying attention that they're doing this as a play for y'all, and you are all buying it. Every Democrat, pretty much, maybe one or two that aren't corrupt in that state, that are not part of the game that they're all playing. I hope y'all see it, especially in Florida. It's not in every state, but that state for sure it is.
okay? Do you have anything else to say, Redhead?
Dana.
Yeah, actually, back to like the treason and stuff with the papers. I don't think of it as treasonous. If you're talking about like on the recording, is that what you're talking about as treasonous?
That's one moment, but there are others.
So tell me what else.
Just storing
What?
documents that should never be declassified under any circumstance. I mean,
Like which?
I can't tell you what they are because I cannot see.
Exactly.
Well, I know, but you're engaging
Exactly.
in nihilism here. I mean, I have to assume that these are important national security documents that should never leave government facilities and that should never be declassified under any circumstance. And there's a reason I don't know
Because
what
the
they
FBI
are.
said so?
Well, but you see,
Because the
you're just
FBI said so, or Jack
you're
Smith?
engaging in nihilism here. So it's like the
Not at
FBI
all.
must be
I'm not
lying. Everyone's
I'm just
lying.
trying to get
What
to.
Redhead? Why don't you just let Jack Smith take care of it, and we'll find out. I mean, in my eyes, he did attempt to, he did kind of attempt a coup. There's a fact pattern there. So, and then he also hoarded some classified documents. We don't know what his intent was, but it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
What about like Joe Biden and his documents? Is that treasonous? I mean, there's more evidence of treason with that, right?
Well, okay. You see, you're
Really?
playing
Do you
both
really
sides
believe
here. You're saying that you don't believe any evidence against Trump, and then you're basically claiming there's more evidence of treason with Biden.
No, I'm not.
Yeah,
Because
that's
I
Yeah,
think it could
it
play
doesn't
either
even.
way. I'm just asking
I
questions.
would say
I'm
this,
just
that
asking questions.
there is some evidence that there may be Biden family, corruption, certainly with his son Hunter, and that's worth looking into. Like, I think we should take that seriously. But if you're trying to both sides it, like, it just completely pales in comparison. I mean, if you compare, say, Hunter to, say, Jared Kushner, I mean, there's just no comparison. The scale of Kushner's, actions and alleged corruption is just way beyond. I mean, he raised, what was it, $2 billion from Saudi interests within several months of leaving the White House, and he has a trail of corruption. So yes, I do think there's corruption all over the political world, and including in Biden world, perhaps, but I just don't think it compares to anything that we've seen in the Trump world, and we'll all find out. Like, it's almost useless debating it, right? Like, Jack
Well,
Smith is on the
there's a
case. We'll find out.
special counsel for the classified documents with Biden too, right? So I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Just for the record, I wasn't defending Trump. I was just asking questions.
Oh,
like,
come on.
I just was curious what the answers
My
would
view on
be
the Trump stuff is.
Well, Jeff
I
actually
mean,
responded to you adequately. I don't think I need.
you're not supposed to have 64 boxes of classified documents when you leave the presidency. Just like full stop. Like you're not supposed to have any.
I think he has
Well,
documents, but I think he might actually have blackmail on people.
Dude,
And that's what they might
freaking
be actually after.
the guy
That's my
attempted a
opinion,
coup.
though.
He replaced top 10 Pentagon officials a month ahead of an election, a contested election. There was a lot of tradecraft that went into that. The December 18th meeting at the White House, like he got right as close as you could possibly get to attempting a coup. That's what came together, and that's like pretty obvious at this point in my eyes.
Yes. Okay, Jack, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Richard. So what do you despise the most about DeSantis, and what do you like about him, if there's anything at all? And if there's nothing you like, then what is something you think he does well or is somewhat competent in?
I would say that the one thing that I sort of like about him is that he played competitive baseball. And I actually, gosh, I will begrudgingly say that I admire him for that. But literally every single thing beyond that is loathsome.
I figured. Thank you.
I like what he said about women and Thai food. I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh my God. Even
What did he
that
say?
was just totally, he mispronounced.
He would go on dates with women and he would say that he loved Thai food. And then if they would correct him, he would not go on the date with them any longer.
Because they should never
Just so
correct
pathological.
That's just.
I just think
That's
it's.
just
I like it
bizarre
because it's so creepy and so funny on a level that you kind of
so
just find
creepy.
it like you find it on like a next level ridiculous. You know?
Yeah.
It's like
It's
if you met
uncanny
somebody like
valley
that in
effect
real
type
life,
stuff.
you would be like, "Yo, that guy's scary." But because he's governor, it's even funnier.
Maybe funny is
Unbearable.
not the word that I. Well, funny in a
Also,
different
Florida kind of deserves DeSantis if we're honest about it. Like Florida kind of deserves to be punished with him.
The state. Okay, Venator, you actually came back and you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I think
Vanator,
that
excuse me.
overall, yeah, overall, that's a reference from one of Ernst Jünger's works, but that's besides the point. I think that the important thing to sort of remember when it comes to especially like these intense two-party politics and the various sort of like figureheads is that the implicit is far more important than explicit. Someone mentioned about, I think it was you, Richard. You mentioned something about paths towards power after all of this, and the sort of the implicit feeling when people look at, say, someone like Trump is that there could be some sort of like path towards power, and with DeSantis not so much. But when it comes to the Democrats, I think there is an absolutely clear path towards power. There is some sort of like mandate behind them that will sort of like usher this Hobbesian contract almost with the voting base. And I think that honestly, I would feel miserable if I was an American Republican at this point, because the choices seem very cynical, to say the least.
Okay, I don't fully understand what you're saying. So you're saying that, you're agreeing with me that the Democratic Party is more likely to be able to be hegemonic after this, whereas the Republican Party isn't? Is that kind of what you're saying? Like there's some kind of motivating force behind their politics?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a clear sort of like you can kind of feel it on a instinctual level that there is a path towards towards a sovereign rule behind them.
Right. They're the natural party of government. They are the only party that's really capable of governing the society, to be honest. I mean, the Ron DeSantis governing means like attacking Disney, arresting people who mistakenly voted for elections, and then decrying critical, some academic discipline that's apparently in lower schools. I mean, it's all weird, fake stunts. Whereas the Democrats, whatever you want to say about them, there's at least a governing philosophy behind it all that you can respect and kind of locate. Whereas with the GOP, even though it is in pretty much a 50-50 split, it's almost like a third party or something. Like it's these like single issues kind of outrage politics, and that is useful to a degree, but it's just, you cannot at all be hegemonic in that way. That's how I see it.
Yeah, at this point, they might as well be the libertarians, to be fair,
Yeah.
in terms of like their,
be like in the
their
Federal Reserve
prospects.
or something. Like, yeah, it's just, it's right. Or even like Vivek, like, tweeting out like God is real. Like, I mean, whatever you want to say about that, it just has this like feel of a third party. I've never thought of it that way before, but that's what they are. Anyway, I'll go back to JD in a moment, but I will go to Freya Gibson, 007. Wow. Do you hear me? Freya, you have to unmute yourself. Freya Gibson, 007, lost her opportunity to speak. Okay, I'll go back to JD. You had something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess more than anything, I feel like if Trump was going to run again, I feel like he might. There's some sort of like moving more to like motivation behind him, and we may never know that, or who's working with him. But there might be something else they're looking for from him, and I've noticed from people like Lindsey Graham and other people, like it almost seems like they're nervous and they want to support him. So I don't know. I think maybe he's gotten blackmail on them or something. And I can't prove that, but it seems like some people are a little jumpy.
It wouldn't be hard to get blackmail on Lindsey. Yeah,
But other people in general, maybe like some Epstein
the blackmail on
documents or
Lindsey
something.
is that he's secretly heterosexual. That's the blackmail on him.
He's secretly straight.
For sure.
Yeah, he's secretly straight. All these years, he's just been LARPing.
I'm of two minds of this. I forgot who mentioned this. Maybe I think it was in my group that I do these conversations. By the way, you should all join my Substack. We do 6 hours or so, or 8 hours every week on this stuff. But someone mentioned this, and they made a good argument that I think convinced me, which was that you could look at Trump and say that, okay, this is the second go round. He knows who his enemies are. He is going to go scorched earth on everyone who ever opposed him and clean out the bureaucracies and all this kind of stuff. Past is precedent. What is it? History is prelude. We've seen what he's like in office, and he didn't do any of those things, really. And there's a part of Trump that wants to get along and be loved. And I think that it's almost more likely that we would just have yet another Trump administration that would be just like the last one. And it would the weird thing about Trump is that it does, as Jeff was saying, it like bleeds into outright treason and anti-Americanism, but never quite can go all the way for various reasons. And so
He wants to be popular rather than populist.
Yeah, well,
in the
it's
final
kind of
analysis.
both though. Like those are the two poles that he kind of flips between. And
Well, he's a narcissist.
yeah,
I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to, too.
yes, he is a narcissist, and Ron DeSantis is a sociopath. It's like pick your mental disorder. I choose narcissism.
That's the Republican Party for you, right there, baby.
Richard, of course you would choose narcissism.
Why
Come
would
on.
you say that?
Even the sociopaths like a narcissist because they don't want competition.
Right.
Well, everyone's a narcissist to a degree.
Sure.
Well, confidence is a good thing.
Unless.
Confidence is good.
In which Biden has none.
Confidence? He's got a lot of confidence.
Biden has turned me into an anti-gerontocracy person.
I think his daughter would disagree with you there.
I think
You mean the seventh granddaughter?
I think we should punish.
Perhaps the granddaughter and the daughter.
I think we should punish all old people by forcing them to be president.
Okay.
You don't get to go to Florida. You don't get to go to Ron DeSantis' Florida. You have to go run for president, right. Grandma.
Isn't it just...
You will wear the aviators and you will like it.
Isn't it telling? Like, I know this was just bluster by DeSantis, but this idea of replacing Disney World with a prison, like, isn't that just kind of like...
Isn't it already a prison?
Well, I know.
Isn't all of Florida a prison?
It's a prison of the soul in many ways. That's the or prison of culture is kind of like the criticism of Disney. But put that aside for a moment. Disney World is pretty fun, and like at its best is a wonderland of a child's imagination. And just doesn't that kind of reveal everything you need to know about DeSantis? Like the fact that his mind immediately jumped to like turning it into an incarceration, place. Like he's evil. He's just an evil person. Richard. I know.
He got married at Disneyland?
He got married at Disney World.
Is that true?
Yes.
Disney World.
I thought he got married in a prison.
Well, there you go.
Anyway, just a thought. Okay.
He's just the most unfun person ever.
I know. That's what I'm
right?
saying.
And I think this is what you're really saying, like in your heart.
Casey, the Southern woman, got married at Disney World?
Yes. They got married at Disney World. Wow. They did. It's a weird kind of class.
Are there photos of him wearing the Mickey Mouse earrings from that wedding?
Is Goofy in the background?
I think he is.
No, Goofy's the groom.
No,
Goofy's the groom.
You guys are joking. This is not, in fact, funny. Like, there is a photo of them at Disney World, and I believe Goofy is, like, there. He's almost the best man. Like,
please tell
literally.
Please tell me Jack Sparrow was there.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Well, I used to love Disneyland. I mean, Disney World, and I still do. It's just that no one wants the LGBTQ stuff down their face every second, especially at Disney World.
Well,
I mean,
unless it's Gay Week, that's pretty fun. I hear.
I'm pretty sure.
Not if you're a child.
Who can afford Disney World? I mean, Christ.
Gay people have children.
They're the ones running Disney World. What are y'all talking about?
Yeah, I mean, Florida is gay.
Jesus,
like, there's no one.
I swear to God, did anybody watch the Birdcage? Come on, people. The best
yeah, I'm with
ever.
you.
Children are not gay, though. Children are not gay.
Margo, take a biology class, please.
What? A biology class?
Children do not even have sex, and I have taken a biology class. Thank you.
Well, I mean, you're raising a good issue, in my opinion. Forgive me, Richard. I don't mean to
go ahead.
Jump in. Just to kind of, I do think there is an interesting issue with the DeSantises and with the gay community or LGBT broader community, and then also with children, and that how that's playing out is very interesting. I happen to be gay. I happen to live in Florida, and I also happen to be a parent. And so it's been interesting to watch it. And I think there have been some, from my personal perspective, like I think there's some good pushback to the quote unquote woke agenda. Like I want common sense, right? Like I kind of feel caught between, one agenda and a counter agenda, and just
Thank
really want
you.
common sense
Yes,
to rule the way. So I'm with you on that, and
agreed.
I hear you, and it bothers me when it's framed as like either the LGBT versus kids. That's not a good frame from my perspective. Although I understand why people embrace it, and I think that's the frame that the DeSantis community actually pushes. Like why, Casey DeSantis's video that she put out, like the quote unquote "don't say gay" bill, like it wasn't called that, and at first things like that came out, and I thought, oh, that's actually reasonable. Do I agree? I think I might agree. Localize this stuff, I wasn't violently, opposed to it or anything like that. I'm pretty open minded about it, and it made sense. I mean, when I looked for a preschool, I looked for one that was, non-politicized environment for my kid. The Venn diagram of not woke and accepting of my family. But then when they're affecting this anti-woke crusading, it really comes across. I start to feel like, and I'm not like I'm not like paranoid about this stuff at all, but I start to feel on the defensive they um, when they take the anti-woke thing and rhetoric and make it a performative thing, and when they make it part of their language and their communication. I think that's why that video bothered many people so much that came out, and it wasn't directly from the campaign, but it was campaign adjacent. I think is fair. And then even
I thought that video was so revealing of who these people really are. I mean, it's a bunch of closet case Republicans. Like
it was super
running
homo-fascist. It was like
Yes.
homo-fascist aesthetic for sure. Part of me wanted to like it, but no, it was lame. I mean, and then with Casey's video about protecting children, I mean, I think there's a real important conversation to have on these topics about protecting children, about the trans issues, about quote unquote what people call grooming. Like I'm here for that conversation, but the way that I feel like they're contributing to this libs of TikTok frame of it, which is like, I just don't really think is healthy and isn't actually helping to solve the problem and cut through the conversation. And Casey's video that came out about protective mamas and mamas for whatever, it just feels really contrived and authentic. And I just kind of want to say to her, like, well, yeah, I want to protect my child too. And I have two fronts that I have to protect them. I have two different fronts to protect them from now. And that's a weird feeling. And so I wish they were just a little bit more authentic and honest about that. But just thought I would give you, Freya, just try to tease out, I think, some of the truths in what you're bringing up and some of the dynamics around the DeSantis campaign that touches on those. So I'll end it there.
Yeah, I mean, where abuse is a real thing and it's a real issue. And it very often will occur at the home. Obviously, we know about it occurring in church environments. The Catholic Church is most notorious. I say this as a dyed-in-the-wool Protestant atheist, but the fact is the abuse of the Catholic Church is apparently not, in fact, worse than abuse at Protestant churches. It is what it is. These are real things. It seems like if you want to solve a problem, you have to, at the very least, have a difficult conversation about these issues. And just obsessing about like Netflix or Disney abusing your child is just ridiculous, to be honest. And I'm really not woke. I don't like this
It's
either.
a way of focusing attention. It's a way of focusing attention off of Florida's real issues over the fact that the governor basically works for the state of Israel, and it's a way of like not having a real conversation about what to do about all the hurricane money that just got stolen. Like let's stop pretending that like this is a serious program and not just like astroturf nonsense from a guy who should know better. I mean, after all, he did go to Harvard and Yale. Like, shouldn't he actually be smart?
That's actually a good question. Isn't that what's happening in Russia right now? Every time Russia loses something on the front line in Ukraine, they come up with some new homophobic policy.
Yeah, it's bash the gays. I mean, this notion that they're not like gays in Florida. I mean, frankly, like everywhere is gay in Florida. Like this is just how it works there.
that's like commonly known as well. So I don't really. They're acting like it's Kansas City or something. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Like the whole DeSantis aesthetic is basically like we're gonna hate on the gays in like probably our gayest state. You know, it just like doesn't make any. It
I
doesn't
don't think
connect.
so. No, I don't think so. I don't think that they hate on the gays. They are just drawing a line in the sand on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
Yeah, but that line, yeah, I think they're trying to do that, and there is a grievance there that is legitimate, but the way that they're drawing the line and the rhetoric and the frame of it does come across as pretty like hostile to
No, they're sucking
gay
up all
people
the
for sure.
energy and all the money and all the time on
Yeah,
talking about the gays and the trans rather than the hurricane that's going to kill grandma. Like that's the
right.
reality
Like
of Florida life right now.
I
And
do
like
agree
Well,
with
it's in a
Charles in
bankrupt
that it is.
Florida. Bankrupt Florida.
yeah, a
It,
bankrupt Florida where those people are going to be climate
And we're
refugees.
all going
Like
to
it's
have to
already
pay
happening.
for it. All of us Americans
Yes.
will have to pay for Florida because of stupid Ron DeSantis. So y'all keep talking
well,
about this Disney shit.
I
Woo!
I think there is a good
Woo!
conversation about climate change
Woo!
impact and
Stand.
localizing externalities of the cost externalities, and the insurance
I
stuff
mean, the
is
dude
part of
straight
that
up
for sure.
stole the Florida pension money after he stole the hurricane money, and he gave it to all of his like dumb donors who then mismanaged the money and lost it. So
But
they're raiding the hurricane funds, they're raiding the pension funds, and like we're just supposed to be like, oh, who's got a dick or not in the kindergarten class? Like seriously, like who cares?
right, like yeah, Charles, I think you nailed it when you said, I think the anti-woke stuff, it doesn't lead anywhere. It's just a cul-de-sac. There's no like there is
No,
an
it's a
issue there.
hustle. It's a hustle.
It's a
They're
it's a
ripping you
hustle. You're right.
off while
It's Daily
they
Wire.
focus you over here. It's three card Monte on a statewide level, and it's where like lots of people have chosen to go live down in Florida, and unfortunately they're like right in hurricane paths. And DeSantis doesn't care because DeSantis is going to go move to Israel when this is all said and done.
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean, I know, but it's the campaign form of Libs of TikTok and Daily Wire,
Yes.
effectively.
Yeah, and Daily Wire and Libs of TikTok are enemy actions in our country. I mean, Daily Wire plugged in with the Chinese and the Israelis, Libs of TikTok with the Russians. Like these people are a threat to our public discourse and need to be removed from the conversation.
Also, I mean, I'm just speaking from my experience, and granted, I'm a bit sheltered out here in Montana. But as I said an hour and a half ago, my experience with the American public school system is entirely positive. These are very dedicated and kind teachers. My experience with Disney is mostly positive. I mean, I agree with you, like, lines should be drawn on, like, kind of crazy woke stuff, but most of the stuff that I'll watch with my children is fine. And it's good, in fact. And at least it's not bad. Most all of it, in fact. And
Also,
don't
like
you, hold on, let me
the
finish.
content today is so like tame compared to how it was when we were growing up
Well, I
as
was
kids.
watching Commando at like age 5 or something.
Yeah, I took 12 8-year-olds to see Starship Troopers in the theater when I was 8. Like
I was all about Gilligan's Island after kindergarten.
But anyway, don't you think that there's I don't know if this is the intention or not. It might actually be. But there's this degree to which, like, the Daily Wire or whatever her name is, Chandra Rayak or whatever, Libs of TikTok, and all these people, they're like turning conservatives into deranged maniacs about this stuff, and they think.
Yeah, that's their purpose, Richard. Like that's what they're doing.
Let me finish. Due to the nature.
I don't want to interrupt, but can I say something about this?
You're interrupting. Let me just finish. Due to the nature of social media, where you're looking at some individual TikTok video about some, bisexual whatever, and you think that that's all teachers, or you're looking at like one example of something that I might even totally agree with, is just kind of like gross or beyond the line or whatever. You start to get in this deranged QAnon mindset that like there are all these devil worshippers who want to drink your children's blood and make them gay. Like it really is deranged. And that doesn't mean that there aren't like some big issues out there, but the way that people have taken it, like the obsession with libraries and stuff like this, where these books are just, no one's reading these books in Florida anyway, and like it's really odd. And the fact that all of these people benefit from it and do all of this stuff in bad faith, like Ben Shapiro or whatever, kind of tells you everything. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so I do think this whole thing is very interesting because I see people. I'm in my mid-20s roughly, and I do think it's very interesting because I see all these like conservatives who are like my age on the internet, and they say stuff like, "Oh, this is so horrible. Like we shouldn't let kids and teen near that." And I remember like being a kid when Michael Jackson died. I was about 13 when he died. And it was like commonly known all over my school that the biggest pop star in human history died because of drug abuse and whatever. And then I see all these people like it feels like so performative when you see people nowadays who say stuff like, "Oh, like back when I grew up, people were so innocent, and we never even knew what sex was when I grew up." And I mean, it's so insincere and so like so stupid. Even when you go back to like a more conservative time, like my grandparents' generation or whatever, like, do you really think the teenagers in the 1930s didn't know what sex was or whatever, or were like completely didn't know anything about violence or whatever? I mean, it's so stupid, this whole thing, that I don't even. It feels so just performative and just stupid and signaling.
But
I mean, yeah.
it's the purpose of it is to get us fighting and arguing amongst ourselves. It's this Ian Miles Chong or your libs of TikTok. Like the purpose of it is an active measures campaign. It's designed to make you go a little crazy, so that you don't actually focus on the fact that like, hey, maybe we should deport Ben Shapiro, right?
Yeah.
Like, or hey, maybe we should like raise some questions about how David Rubin makes money, right? Like, but instead we're all just supposed to be like, oh yeah, like let's talk about the rainbow flag, friend. Like nobody cares, like you go to Key West, you go to Miami, you go to, like, gays are all over Florida. Like everywhere you go there's a gay, and like it's a perfectly wonderful place. No one's gonna fuck with your kids. It's just like, it's just ridiculous. The big problem is the hurricane coming to kill everyone.
Yeah, and it's like very interesting when it comes to like ethnic minorities, because it's overcompensation. It's like when Mexicans like wear with their American flag or whatever, like they're doing this because they don't want you to look at their skin color, and you just think like, why are you even here? And
Ian Michael Chong isn't even here.
Yeah,
and he's
a fucking Chinese Malaysian
he's
filth.
living in Malaysia,
and neither is
talking
Jordan
about American politics endlessly, basically telling us that everyone in America is a obese, trisexual, transgendered maniac, and it's just like it's just really annoying. And these people should shut up. Go ahead.
Pardon me. I think Charles was onto something. When you view this all as agitprop, and you understand that it's agitprop, and at the very least, it's for clout and grift, and perhaps for a form of an active measure, unwittingly or unwittingly, then it kind of opens your eyes to a different perspective. And I don't know how many of you guys have been to a pride parade, but there's some weird stuff at every pride parade, but 90% plus of it's like kind of normal, right? But the way that the conservative media works is they'll film the 1% that's like kind of way out there, and then everybody sees that, and then it just creates this whole perception that's everything. And I think that's like a metaphor for what's happened within the GOP at scale, where a lot of people's perception of the world is like, oh my gosh, the woke communists are really taking over. There's a secret agenda. It's an existential issue. I think I was kind of psyoped into a little bit or self-psyoped into that mindset in 2016, and a little bit like the elite, the corrupted elite and all that stuff. And there is some elements of truth in these things, but it's very skewed, their sense making, and it's ultimately a real distraction, and it's a real disservice, I think, to the country. And I come back to the very people that they're serving. Like it's almost like you're weaponizing these people's Christianity, their patriotism, their values against their own interests. And that's where I really get pissed
by
off.
design.
If
It's a
that
weapon.
makes sense. Yeah.
It's a weapon.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway.
And like we should take it seriously when like the Chinese write pamphlets about using social media to cause chaos. Like we should take this shit seriously. Like we should think about like what does it mean that Prigozhin ran the Internet Research Association?
Yes.
Where were the like
Well,
we should be thinking about that, and then we should be asking ourselves like, am I being encouraged to hate my fellow Americans by a bunch of weird fucking foreigners? And like, what should we do about those weird fucking foreigners? You know,
yeah,
that
yeah,
should be how we think about it. I think.
I agree. And if you look at the right, it's evolved in almost this talent agency model, right? Where the influencers have coalesced around certain, call them talent. Daily Wire is effectively a talent agency of different personalities, and they have different contracts with them and so forth. And once you start to see it that way, it kind of looks, it's a celebritization and influencer culture that's really taken over that, 5 years ago I would have said, oh, that's interesting, that can have some benefits. But I think it's like become the right. And Richard, to your point, like there's a real Ian Miles Chong problem on the right. And I would add Jordan Peterson is just Canadian Ian Miles Chong.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have these foreigners who are part of these talent agencies who, and Ian Miles Chong is also a columnist at RT, as I understand it. He's on their website. So, he's actually a literal paid Russian propagandist. And he gets picked up by these various PACs and publications. And 5 years ago, you could see how that might be, okay, whatever. But in this day and age, there's enough education about that. It's just so wrong and bad. And then you look at somebody like Jordan Peterson, who, Rules for Life was interesting. He's done some interesting work. He's got some intellect there. And yet he's so pathetic.
Yeah.
He is not somebody we should look up to. He should not have a place on the algorithm. I mean, he cries. He's an addict. He's just the worst.
These are con men who should be driven from the public sphere with a whip.
And then you look at Ashley St. Clair. Like, I'm not trying to pick on her so much as what she represents in terms of like the midwit right. Like I kept seeing her in my timeline. I'm like, why am I always seeing her? And she kind of combines that like thirst with like, this like funniness and this like kind of midwit take. And it's like, that's what the algorithm has been optimized around, but that's also what the right has been optimized around. Like, where are the people discussing how to solve real problems and what the right solutions should be? It's a real mess right now.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We should blame Elon, the foreigner, for all of our problems.
Yeah.
I think I tweeted just like a few hours ago that South Africans run Twitter just as well as they run their electric grid. It's like complete shite.
I think
Facebook,
weaponized Girardianism.
Facebook might even be worse. It has been worse in terms of spreading QAnon stuff and things like that. But I get the sense with Threads that they want Ashley St. Clairism in even like even the politics should be taken out. It's almost just Ashley St. Clair. There's something, I think that is what is trying to be created by that platform, and it's somehow like more evil. Okay, name.
Are you trying to suggest that Mark Zuckerberg doesn't have our best interests at heart, Richard? Mm-hmm. Is that what you're trying to say? Wow, man.
He has like awful taste in women, so I do think that makes. I don't really trust men who have bad taste in women. So
I'm with you 100%.
Actually, I'm not with you. Actually, I don't know about that. I don't think we should comment.
It's a thing.
His wife
guy
might be the most normal.
Okay, go there. Can you explain it, Charles?
Well, I mean, he's married to this weird Chinese woman, and like with Mark Zuckerberg, and it's like it's weird and it's creepy that like the CEO of one of our top companies is like talking about killing animals himself and eating meat from them and like training in the octagon. Like, this is not normal corporate behavior. Like, this is strange stuff. And people should just be like, no, this is a weirdo who, shouldn't be involved with setting our agenda and the conversations that we have.
I forgot
Elon Musk is a drug user. Like, what the fuck? Like, mean, shouldn't we be shunning this behavior? I mean, we've got these weird foreigners with their weird wives and their weird girlfriends doing weird things and warping our sense-making capability and ruining our country. And it's a real problem.
I think this is in Kevin McDonald's. I forget if it's Culture Critique or if it's an interview he did. But Kevin McDonald, he has this joke where he says that if the rabbis had to decide if the walls to the ghettos would have been even higher, and I get that feeling when I look at pictures of Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, where you just think like, oh, so this is what Jews do when they get out of the ghetto, where they just like marry these ugly, hideous women. I just think like, ugh, and like these people should be like, I'm sort of like when I see a picture of that couple, I become very.
Say what you will about Jeff Bezos, but like dumping the Princeton educated wife for the liposuction Latina whatever, that's very on brand for like most of our Fortune 500 company people. Like that I understand, okay? Like everybody knows somebody who did that kind of thing in their life. Fine, whatever. But the weirdness around Musk and around like Zuckerberg of like threatening a cage match or whatever, it's like they're all carnies all the way through, and they're all grifters, basically stealing our time and attention from us and ruining our country
and our children.
I see Zuck in a different light than Musk. I mean, I think Musk is. I think you have to analyze them very separately. I think Musk has some real talents, and I think he's more problematic. Let's just use that word. Zuck, I mean, his wife, as I understand it, she's American. She has a medical degree from UCSF.
My God!
Like she's
not.
I mean, they have they have a couple.
I'm more American than she is.
Well, okay, I don't know her background. I don't know your background, but like what I'm trying to say is like I don't know all the details, but Zuck strikes me as a slightly different category than Musk. I actually have more time and allowance for Zuck than I do for Musk, but that could just be.
You can root for them both to lose the cage fight. Like you can do that.
Sure.
Like that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, I saw Zuck's, after funding the defund the police, he spent $40+ million on security. So, he has a certain moral arbitrage thing that he's doing, but I don't know. He seems to be a little bit more
trafficking on Facebook that he wouldn't shut down,
or on Instagram, or all the suicide.
Yeah, sure. No. Oh yeah.
Can you ever like trust a man who have like ugly wife? It's like my question.
And it's not just the United
like
States; it's the whole world.
Yeah.
Is doing it
I just reject that. I just think that's really insulting. I mean,
okay.
Can you question a man who has an ugly wife? Like, really? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because it's like,
I think you can question.
I mean, I certainly appreciate your Eastern European perspective on this, and it's one that it's a bigotry that I personally share. But I'll just say,
Sweden,
like,
but go ahead.
I can hate him for all kinds of other more elaborate, more intricate, frankly, more interesting reasons than the fact that he's got a dumpy Asian 6 for a wife.
Yeah, this is getting a bit crude, to be honest.
Yeah.
Can I just say something? No. Because I do think it's very...
No, don't do the ugly wife stuff. But...
I just a tiny, short point. Because I do think that, like, I judge people by who they surround themselves by, and I do think that it says a lot about your character if you're attracted to someone who's like very, very ugly. And yeah, that's
let me do name redacted, and then I probably will cut this off around 8 p.m. Eastern time, but I'll try to get to some more people. Name redacted.
Thanks, Richard. So, we're going to move on from dunking on people's wives, but back to some other very important topics. A few things I want to bring up. Charles is on to something. There is a lot of foreign influence on this platform. You go to the average space of the day, the biggest one, and 90% of the people speaking on stage are foreigners. Yes. And a lot of them are, and I don't care about people's religion. Do what you want and worship whatever God, but there's a lot of Muslims on these stages too. Just want to point that out, and that's a fact. And that's fine, but be aware of coming on a lot of these popular spaces that they're dominated by foreigners.
Also,
okay?
let me jump in real quick, and I'll let you finish.
this is something that I've noticed, and I'm afraid of having like what was it, Benny Johnson moment where he said, "Why am I getting served all these Google ads for gay cruises?" I'm slightly worried of having that. But when I look at my For You tab, I am getting a lot more porn than I ever saw before. And so I didn't even know that pornography was legal on Twitter or goes with the rules, that is, until like a year ago. Like, I guess I assumed that you could find it, but now when I go to For You, there'll be something on like the Ukraine war, and then there'll be just like hardcore pornography and or kind of sometimes soft core like big tits or whatever. But I had never seen that before, and it does seem like, I don't know if this has been discussed a lot. I know that there was something about the lack of moderation allowing like snuff videos and animal abuse videos, and all these teenagers were looking at it, and Musk is doing nothing or maybe even encouraging it. But I think there's like an undercurrent of promoting trash by Musk.
There really is, and there are dark corners of Twitter, and as we saw, Instagram, what was uncovered, where they were, oh, you like the pizza icon or whatever it was, or the map, and they were promoting, you may like these other accounts too, which just happened to be basically this pedophile network, and I guess trafficking or whatnot was going on there. But to go further on that, these social media companies, they put more investment into, the COVID debate, or, I mean, you have, for instance, Richard, you're probably not familiar with the stuff I've done, but Zuckerberg, since we talked about him, he hired a former CIA operative to build his misinformation department.
Interesting.
His name's Aaron Berman. It's on my timeline. It's like the second and third tweet there. And this guy 2 months ago, Richard, was just elevated to, he's now head of elections content policy globally. And this is a 17-year CIA operative. You should take a look at that. That'll make you think for a second, like, why is that? And that's out in the open. They're not hiding that. It's on his LinkedIn page. And he says he's a former CIA. They're open about this. Anyway, so that's the point there, is they're putting more effort into controlling the narrative online when it comes to elections or COVID. Yet this sick shit that's going on in the dark corners of like child pornography or whatnot, that sort of is just like happening behind the scenes.
You wonder if they're related. Like, to be honest, I've been well, you might or might not know this, but I have gone full libtard when it comes to things like COVID, to the chagrin of many of my former fans. But so the idea that, there's someone from the government, trying to not allow nutball stuff.
It's not just someone.
No, I get it. No, I'm just setting the background here. That would almost strike me as a good thing, but I think the fact that, you have, it's like the worst of both worlds. You have government oversight, and then you almost seemingly have the promotion of this dark shit that is deeply concerning.
It's very disturbing, for sure, and that's why when I hear Charles bring up these things about foreign influence and having to eradicate that, because the bottom line is this: Facebook is obviously the biggest social media company globally.
Yeah.
Twitter is very small, and it is mostly majority US platform, yet it's now being dominated by a lot of foreign influence, and I'm noticing it. Anyone who sort of steps, I mean, Charles sees it, he's calling it out, and I applaud that, and there should be more of that. So yeah, I wanted to sort of comment on that, and then quickly on the subject of the space of Ron DeSantis. This is a classic case of buy the rumor, sell the news. This guy was hyped up in the polls. He actually, I think, was neck and neck with Trump, maybe even leading him early on before he announced. And then they hype up this, bullshit space announcement of his, which was a total grift and marketing scheme. It wasn't even about DeSantis. It was marketing Twitter Spaces, and that's about it.
By the
And
way,
then,
two foreigners were interviewing him, Elon
of
Musk
course,
and David Sachs.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah, I
so
see
then,
where you're going.
and then,
Finish your thought. Finish your thought.
yeah. So just real quick, it's like the guy's a dud. I mean, even your tweet earlier, Richard, showing Casey. It's like these people are completely disconnected with the voters. Like they're, they're backed by, and then again back to Charles and a lot of the things he's talking about the money behind DeSantis, and like I don't even know how if there's another candidate for president that has visited Israel as many times as DeSantis has. I mean, it's like it's pretty crazy with that. But the guy's an empty suit.
Yeah.
Okay, there's no other way to describe him. Like I literally don't even believe he wants to run for president. Okay, and I learned a fact about him on this space that blew my mind. He has a Juris Doctorate from Harvard. Like I would have never guessed that. Okay. Like there's people like you, Charles, like people that speak and you can tell you guys are intelligent. You don't get that from DeSantis. He's like a bumbling fool. I'm just going to say this. Okay. He's had a few campaign things like Trump shook up. And I'm not going to go in a Trump DeSantis thing, but it's like he shook up the party and started a movement, and they're not going to be able to knock that down. It's going to be on Trump's terms of either he dies or he decides not to run, and then they look for an alternative. So it's really big money pushing a horse out there, and they picked the wrong horse with DeSantis. Like the guy is out there interrupting rodeos. And then the crowd like doesn't know who he is, and they're like, who is this guy? Like Rodeo Rob is a good nickname. And the guy's just flat, and then he sort of disappeared from the campaign trail, and his wife's out there showing up in like high heels and I mean, dude, it's embarrassing at this point. And in my opinion, I sort of laughed at Charles for bringing up Chris Christie, but I actually sort of think he's onto something. And I think in a few months after these first couple debates, I'm telling you, we're going to be talking about someone different. DeSantis is going to be an afterthought, in my opinion. And the never back down pack that they have will shift their money eventually to someone else because DeSantis will not be able to beat Trump.
They will back down. The never back down pack will back down.
Yeah.
Yes.
So those are my comments on that.
Totally
and Richard,
agree. I can imagine many dark horses outside of Trump succeeding, but it's not going to be Ron. It's just not.
No.
Yeah.
And name redacted. There was something I was trying to understand when you were talking about, on the one hand, you're concerned about foreign influence. I share that concern, and Charles and kind of comments on that frequently. And yet at the same time, you're concerned about ex-CIA people at large tech platforms. How do you square that? Because isn't that kind of a good thing when you have, counterintelligence, counter-influence efforts within these companies? Hold on, let me finish. Elon Musk, fired the counter-influence team at Twitter, which I thought was a total disgrace. So, I'm just trying to tease that out because I'm with you on countering foreign influence, but I actually think it's a good thing when these tech platforms build teams that do just that, and maybe a bad thing when they try to politicize it and it spills over into that domain. So, just can you help me understand
Okay, well, yeah. So it's two separate issues. Okay, and I think Charles would be the expert to talk about the foreign influence thing because he's talked about it a lot. But I wouldn't associate the two as the same thing. And we're talking about Meta versus what we're talking about here on Twitter and Twitter Spaces, which is largely dominated by foreign actors. And then you got to wonder like their background. I'm not even gonna like name anyone
Twitter had a lot of Israelis and a lot of Indians and making a lot of policy decisions. Facebook had a lot of Israelis and a lot of, sort of compromised entities making those decisions. I frankly don't have any problem with censorship so long as it's transparent about why people were censored. I think a lot of the times people are just, and there should be an appeals process as well, because people change and grow and make mistakes or whatever. So I think that should be a part of it as well. But when Yoel Roth got fired, that was basically some inner Jew stuff. It was basically the Likud Jews versus the Mossad Jews, and it was hard to know, which side to root for.
Yeah, I would just argue that the problem isn't counter influence within the tech platforms; it's that there's not enough of it.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Okay, well that's fine. I mean, I have a problem with. I mean, we know the background of what the CIA does. They operate, foreign, right, and they do their shit, and then that's fine. They have a role in this world and they go do their thing. But I have a problem with taking those career CIA people and bringing them on the largest social media platforms and having them craft misinformation policy and now be in charge of elections content policy. So, I mean, we'll see how things play out, but and these people can go get a job after their career. That's fine. But should it be managing misinformation on large social media platforms? That's a whole nother discussion, but it is a totally separate discussion than foreign influence on Twitter Spaces. And
it's actually a very related discussion. And I think there's an inconsistency in your view. And I would just challenge you to consider, and I understand the optics of it, right?
That's fine. We can maybe have a discussion on a different space.
Yeah,
but
I would be more on the names. I'd be more on the names redacted side of it, where I think that there needs to be disclosure about what's going on. I mean, we do need to raise the real question though about, is Ron DeSantis controlled by the Israelis? And I don't think it's a crazy idea to
it's
ask.
Totally not. I mean, 2 weeks before his campaign launch, he had to fly to Tel Aviv to sign a local law for Florida. It sort of looked to me like it was like kissing the ring. It's it was just really bad optics there. Yes. I mean, maybe some people think that's okay, but
no, it's not okay.
It doesn't seem okay to me. It's not okay.
I don't even like the idea of putting flyers on people's front doorsteps. I mean, I can kind of get the justification for the law, but going and signing a Florida law in Israel that is specifically designed to protect Jews or go against anti-Semitism is, that is not okay.
By which they mean,
and by the way,
by which they mean clear, even criticizing Israeli policies is anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't matter what country he went to. I don't support that. It's but it's I don't like it. It's not okay.
Well, I think it speaks to a weird, another weird dynamic in the Republican Party on the right, which is just how can we be friends with Israel? We want to be just friends, a healthy dynamic there, and instead it's
so I don't.
Either super pro or anti-Semitism, and you saw this dynamic play out with the scandals in the DeSantis campaign last week, right? You had the Max Nordau account, which is advertising itself as muscular Jew. And then you had, what's the guy's name? Pedro, who had been in these anti-Semitic chats. And all the DeSantis influencers were defending both. So there's this really unhealthy dynamic there that feels
isn't it
out of equilibrium.
Yeah, I would go even further on this point, because isn't it fascinating that the most philo-Semitic and most anti-Semitic people in the country vote for the same candidate? And so David Duke loves Trump. He endorses Trump. Also, Trump did more for Israel, perhaps, than any other president, at least according to his own admission. Jared was a major factor in the campaign. It's this weird dynamic that you're talking about, where Pedro, he's supporting Ron DeSantis, and then in his free time, he goes on Groyper forums and talks about how he's a Hispanic Nazi or something. It's this weird dynamic. And I actually think this is a major factor. I think the kind of deranged anti-Semitism that you see on the right reinforces a certain Jewish interest. So deranged anti-Semitism goes hand in hand with Zionism. I mean, they are totally compatible. At the very least, you could say that people who want to engage in pro-Zionist policies are kind of willing to tolerate some of these loons so long as they are backing the right candidate. So it's a very
Steve Bannon said just as much to me during the 2016 campaign, that basically the vote of an anti-Semite is worth the same as the vote of a Jew.
Right.
So
right, but
which is true. I mean, just like mathematically, I can't fault the man for that.
We're not able to look straight at the issue of Zionism, the issue of Judaism writ large. I mean, this reminds me of Alain de Benoit when you're saying like the Christian anti-Semite is kind of inherently schizophrenic or hysterical in the sense that he can't see straight. He doesn't know if he wants to worship a Jewish Messiah or kill the Jews or whatever. He's just he's pathological. And you see the same thing in the right. All of these people, all of this, like actually Michael Tracy. I'm not a Michael Tracy fan for obvious reasons, but he actually said something correct when he said that like this whole like dark right on Twitter, like they're just a wing of the Republican Party at the end of the day. And isn't it weird that these people who we don't know their real names, they're lurking in the shadows and they're talking about, the Jews or the blacks or whatever, that they can be easily mobilized for a Zionist cause? Like, isn't that fascinating? Kind of makes you think.
There's like another interesting thing about this is that there are a lot more anti-Semite than Jews. So outside of Israel, so it's much more. So mobilizing the anti-Semitic vote is almost more important. And there's also like a symptom. I know we're not doing the hands thing anymore, but this was actually why I came into this space, because I wanted to say that I do think like DeSantis is a bit like a symptom of that the Republican Party doesn't have any university educated voters anymore. So you have all this like stupid anti. Because the thing about anti-Semitism is that a lot of people who are drawn to that stuff, they are people who don't really are that intelligent, so they don't really understand how systems work. So they just do this thing of like, oh, let's blame the use at the central bank. And they don't really understand how the central bank works, but they think that, oh, use run it, so it must be bad. So I do think that that is like a big appeal for. And also the thing with Christianity is this is not going to be a bit esoteric, but I do think it's interesting about the point because Ron DeSantis, he makes something about being a Christian conservative or whatever, and I do think that's quite interesting because you cannot really imagine this in like an Islamic country, because Muhammad was the final prophet and of God, so it's not really like a Jewish religion in the same sense that Jesus was the final message. What's the Christian term for it?
Messiah.
Son of God, the King of the Jews. That was the Christians' belief. So Christians have like a very different perspective on this.
So he was executed. So
I do think like
King of the Jews. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So like Christians have this like very weird relationship where Jesus is both the King of the Jews and their God, literally this God. And at the same time, it's like I mean, I do think Christians are very interesting because they would say stuff like Jews killed Jesus, and I think like, oh, he was a fucking Yid. So I mean, what's your point? I mean, it's like saying like Palestinians hate Yasser Arafat. I mean, okay.
I think the point we're trying to get to, and the one that Charles continues to drive home, is we don't want foreign influence. And you saw it with, unfortunately, this bothered me about Trump, with Kushner in the White House. Like, I don't want that guy in the White House anywhere near him. And he was taking the same money.
It's a form of occupation, right? And
like, pretty much.
At a certain point, all of us are going to have to make a decision of whether or not we want our children to live as Uyghurs or as Palestinians, right? And when you see the technologies that are pioneered on the West Bank, or you like put your head on a pillow made by My Pillow that's made with Uyghur cotton, right, or Zhejiang cotton, like you are complicit in this kind of occupation of the United States by a hostile foreign power that wants certain things that are not in the interests of the United States. And DeSantis has been to Israel 4 times during his governorship. That's a lot. And there's all sorts of examples of him like allowing IDF, which is a foreign military on American soil, for the Surfside, condo thing. Even if you don't have the views, which I do, that the Surfside condo thing was a way of covering up a lot of Israeli malfeasance that was going on there. But there's a lot of weird stuff with DeSantis, and it goes back to his time in the Navy, where he was, helping to torture people. Like this is what he was doing. Like it's not a secret that he was up to that. Or when he was basically advising the Navy SEALs on war crimes that they could commit in Iraq. Like this is all documented stuff. And it's not good for the national security interests of the United States to have such a person who, he had a best friend who was a lobbyist, a guy by the name of Kent Sturman, who was his landlord. There was an ethics investigation into it. The ethics investigation shut down because he left and went into the governor's mansion. But that guy was involved in all kinds of weird Israeli activity all up and down the United States. So, like,
and what happened to him?
Oh, allegedly he killed himself in a parking lot, supposedly sending some things through the mail, but we've never seen what he sent or who he sent them to, which is also surprising. And all the records about all of the weird stuff he was doing in the Jackson County Police, or Sheriff's Association, all those records were suspiciously deleted. So yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff with DeSantis. There's, the guy he was running against in the primary on the Democratic side. Who was running against Gillum, who was thought to be the larger challenger, who died in a very suspicious car accident. There's the weird stuff with his sister, and the conditions under which there's just like a lot of weird shit. And taken together, you're like, whoa, I can't even believe this dude is governor of Florida, let alone a presidential contender. But the thing that makes me at least happy about it is that, like, I think everyone is kind of realizing like this guy is like dangerous and weird and creepy and straight. They just know that there's something very wrong with him as president, and that's actually kind of a good thing to see in the American public, that like enough people of all sides and tribes and whatever can come together in hating DeSantis. So I think it's great, frankly, and I wish we could come together about hating more people, frankly.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning. I mean, when it comes to the foreign influence, none of, as an issue, there is an issue there with many different countries, and none of it excuses anti-Semitism or other forms of bigotry. I mean, I think that's worth mentioning. In fact, if you go there, it's actually counterproductive because it immediately delegitimizes.
Yeah, but they'll call any criticism of Israel anti-Semitic. That's
sure.
But
I get that,
shouldn't you be bigoted against certain people, though? I mean,
well, Labrat, I mean, I may have misheard you, but I don't know if I heard you use a slur towards Jewish people earlier, or maybe I misheard you. But like, I'm not cool with that. Like, I don't think I can acknowledge that there are influence issues and that we need to find equilibrium, but like, that does not give us any excuse, in my opinion, to like go into actual like anti-Semitism and bigotry. In fact, I think
that's actually
extremely
not
counterproductive.
You're being a
in fact, the foreign influence.
I mean, to be fair, I appreciate Jewish people more than anyone here. But okay, go ahead.
I'm talking about.
I got triggered by the use of
Israel.
That's fair.
Hold on. We're talking about the money that's funding the campaigns. When I'm talking about foreign influence on Twitter,
name redacted. I understand that, but somebody used the slur.
No, that's fair enough. And Labrat has.
I mean, look, we live in a world.
I know you guys are Americans.
We live in a world in which people are criminalizing speech when we criticize Israeli politics, where if you want to sell things to various state governments, you have to sign a loyalty oath to a foreign government. No, like, fuck all that. Like, that's what DeSantis is for.
Agree with this,
he's a traitor, and like he needs to be stopped.
Yeah, I agree with this. The fact that in Texas and Florida you have to be a Zionist in order to do business with the government or work in a public school or something.
I've literally had to get waivers. I've had to get waivers for my companies because I refuse on principle to sign these documents because they're just disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, I see them when they, I mean, it's
And it's
disturbing
again
to get one of those things.
the reddest counties, and again the candidates that are supported by anti-Semites. I mean, we're back to this contradiction. I would just say
No, it's literally the
on
Jews
this,
who want to help me fight these
yeah,
things. Like the American Jews hate this shit because they think it's bad for the Jews because it
yeah,
is. And it's funny because a lot of American Jews are actually like volunteering to be various people's lawyers to sue over this stuff because it's unconscionable. It's disgusting.
yeah. I would just
Yeah, absolutely, and because Jewish people are smart and they understand this
yeah.
stuff.
I would just say that I think you are able to criticize Judaism itself and Islam. I don't like all this kind of like we respect everyone and there's some things that are sacred or something. I mean, I engage in criticism of the Abrahamic faith.
I do think that's
Yes,
a very
you do,
fair point.
Richard. Can confirm.
I do think that's a very fair point because no one ever accuses you of being like anti-Arab or anti-Persian if you criticize Islam.
Right.
Even though like there were like prominent Islamist scholars, and these are not like any loony people. These were like mainstream scholars who would say that like Islam is a Persian religion. Islam only became a great religion when it invaded Baghdad and stuff like that. So
yeah, and that's not even what this is about. It's not, and for anyone to reply and go, "Oh, anti-Semite or racist," like my problem is rooting out foreign influence in politics and on this platform. And you can like, name whoever you want who's doing it, but I'm against that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me just say. Let me just say one
with
thing.
Miriam Adelson, who is an Israeli-born person who is literally married to a Jewish American mob boss in the form of Sheldon Adelson, who is basically tied in with the Chinese government. Like this is who his backers are, and like we should be able to talk about that openly and without fear.
Yeah.
Because it's disgusting. It should be called out and it should be stopped if we can stop.
Let's
and if I can,
there's like another thing here which I think is interesting.
Yeah, you're come on. It's my space, Lab Guy. You always jump in like that. All right. I'm going to go. I want to go get a little exercise before it gets too late. So I'm going to go to Charlotte and then Techno. So Charlotte, you first, and then we'll put a bookmark in this.
Oh my gosh! Finally.
That's what she said.
Yeah, right. Or you got to. Anyways.
Man. Tough crowd tonight.
I'm here all week.
On Santa. That's why I originally like tried to get up here and speak on and everything, and then went to the whole anti-Semite and Semite narrative.
We can bring up whatever topic you want to talk about.
As it tends to go.
Yeah, go for it, Charlotte. Right. You got the floor.
But no, so I was on the ground there during Ian. I went down there as part of an initiative to help get people's homes repaired and everything like that. And I learned so much on the Florida insurance, the rules that everybody has to play by, and everything that was going on. And I am like so highly disappointed in DeSantis and in the Florida legislature for how they've handled disaster preparedness and disaster recovery. They look at these things like just going and delivering water or building a bridge or anything like this as these huge victories. Yet we still have homeowners who are out of their homes, almost years later. We have people that have had over a 250% rate increase on their homeowners insurance. And that is going to nearly a single provider in Florida now, Citizens, who is still at an insolvency rate, where State Farm, the world could catch on fire 5 times over, and they still have enough cash to pay out their indemnities. And you're telling me they don't want to, show up and insure people in Florida and make it a better market? Well, it's not the, liability of Florida with hurricane. It's the liability of Florida with their legislature and the laws that we have here in Florida. And DeSantis has kind of booted them all out, and then even come back and said, oh, hey, you can't sue citizens for selling you a bad policy.
Wow.
Whereas, if you pay your premium or whatever, you have your house insured for, let's just say $250,000, and you have a total wipeout, well, you might get $15,000, maybe, if you get there first. And that is a absolute scary reality of what's going on in Florida. And that's an absolute disappointment in how DeSantis has run things here with just that. I'm also part, of the LGBTQ community. I'm a transsexual. Like, that alone has, I agree with the overall, kind of mission statement of it, but how they've implemented it is just absolutely disastrous for us.
Yeah. I've heard some people are saying that transsexuals should leave the state or something. I mean, do you think that's a bit overdone?
That's way over. Like, that's over exaggeration. Like, honestly, if you can, just hold out or, kind of pay attention to things, you're going to see that. I mean, it's even already happened with, one federal judge ruling on a few things, which I don't entirely agree with. Like, I agree with the way they wrote those laws and everything. Like, they were just shotgunned out. Like, they just stuffed a bunch of words in there and then threw them out there and made them so vague for the people that, even a federal judge is like, hey, this is unconstitutional. Try again. They could have done a lot better with that, but they just rushed it through. They pushed it through. So, I'd say, wait and see. Life may be hard right now, but it will get better, type thing. But as far as how DeSantis has handled it and taken these as just these huge victories, he's being pushed by whoever's backing him. He was great originally as a governor, but as soon as it got pushed into his mind by whoever it was that he could be a presidential candidate, he dropped the ball, like, wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And that, like, I used to love the guy. I voted for the guy. But other than that, he's taken his eye off of the actual people who like him and vote for him, and he's put it onto whoever he's being pushed by, and trying to take it to the presidency. And I don't agree with that. I don't like that.
All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that report from the ground. All right. Let's do techno. You have the floor next.
Well, the thing about Ron DeSantis is, I don't know about you, but I like a good melted Swiss, melted Swiss and caramelized onions on a burger. That is great hot stuff. You can get that at a number of different locations, right? It's a delicious burger. Honestly, it's probably the most delicious you can get.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
And I think Ron DeSantis, he's not a burger enjoyer. He's not a burger respecter. Frankly, I just don't understand what the hell is wrong with him. He's not eating hamburgers on a daily basis. He probably did not even try the Grimace shake, honestly. I don't know what is wrong with him.
That's actually a really good Trump impression.
Thank you, Mr.
Let's
President.
go.
Trolling. I didn't know that Trump was such a big fan of mine that he would actually troll me. I mean, that.
And to use his
I was a big fan of you, but then you voted for fucking Joe Biden. What the hell is wrong with you? Why did you vote for that guy?
Well, I was really disappointed in you, Mr. President. What happened to you? I guess is
this guy's great.
Yeah.
Well, you see, the thing is, have you ever watched Lord of the Rings, like Grima went?
Yeah.
my son-in-law Jared, he's a total sorcerer. He's some kind of wizard or something. I think he was casting a spell on me. He's working for the Shadow Money Wizard Gang. Shadow Wizard Money Gang, right?
So what happened on J6? What were you up to during that time? I hear you were eating burgers and throwing food.
You know, I was having, as I do, and I was
Remember, you
playing.
have the right to remain silent.
I was playing Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on my Dingo handheld gaming system, and so I was kind of tuned out that whole time. I did not really pay a great amount of attention.
Well, maybe you should have. I mean, if you weren't playing Legend of Zelda, you could have like installed yourself as dictator. I mean, I'm not one to give you an advice, but maybe you should have been paying more attention.
You know, since we're on the topic of video games, I think the reason I don't want to be dictator is if you ever played Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, you know, the bad guy in that game is Senator Armstrong. And I think I would say that he's literally me. I would say that he's probably right about everything. And frankly, I don't think he did anything wrong. I think we need to just burn America down. It's time to go.
Okay. All right. Let's do this. I appreciate the fact that we have these celebrity guests. I am just going to end it here. I'm going to get a little exercise. And this was a good discussion. And it wasn't as curmudgeonly as maybe the title implied. I think we got at a lot of stuff. So thanks for everyone who joined. And thanks particularly to those who contributed. And I will talk to you guys later. Okay. Tschüss.
Thanks, Richard.
Let's go.
Great
Thank you
space.
for your time.